Is it? How did I get mine higher? Oh, well. We need training of managing these chairs. It's 6 o'clock p.m. and I would welcome you to the November 21, 2023 regular meeting of the Township Board, Meridian Charter Township. Please. Hey. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 on our agenda is a roll call. Deputy Clerk Gordon, please.
Supervisor Jackson.
Here.
Treasurer DeShane.
Here.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Here.
Trustee Sundlin.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
Clerk Guthrie. 6 board members present. Clerk Guthrie is absent.
Thank you. We have no presentations tonight, and so we move to item 5, where citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. There are 2 opportunities for public comment. Citizens who wish to address the board regarding agenda and non-agenda items will have an opportunity at the beginning of the meeting as well as near the end of the meeting. Citizens are required to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and you will receive a warning 30-second warning before the 3-minute time limit has expired. I have 2 green cards at this time. The first is from Sean O'Brien, but I think if you'd like to come now, please.
Unless you're.
There's no public hearing. There is no public hearing, but I believe at the end of the discussion period, Mr. Schmidt will allow you to present the new information that you intended to present.
Well, I'm not presenting for the applicant,
Okay?
so I'm presenting for the property owner.
Okay. Now is the appropriate time to do that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to address the board tonight. I'm Sean O'Brien. I live at 16948 Pine Hollow Drive in East Lansing. And as I mentioned previously, I represent the property owners for the vacant parcel under rezoning for 5010 Park Lake Road. Sam McCool, his brother Salim, and his other brother Charlie have owned this property for, 1992 and 1994. They purchased the property, and it's a unique property. They own multifamily properties on the west side of town, and their intention 30 years ago plus was to build multifamily. It's one of the few RD zone properties in the township that they were able to find. It also has split zoning. Part of it is RA, which is single family, medium density. But the combined property of 36 acres would allow a developer to develop about 142 dwelling units if it were designed with a combination of single family and multifamily. About 6 years ago, they asked me to come market the property. Their intention, they've aged like we all have. They feel like, well, you know, we're a little late to develop this ourselves. Find us a developer that can bring something to the township that makes sense for the community. And so we've had multiple, there are a lot of challenges with the site. There's floodplain issues, there's wetlands, and there's elevation changes, about 30 feet that goes from Park Lake Road to the rail line. So there's setbacks for that. It is a challenging property, but I had some experience with the Redwood developers on the other areas in town. They've done a tremendous job everywhere they've been. They've been ideal citizens to work with the planning commissions in Delhi and in Delta and DeWitt and others. And so with this project, they're planning to only build 106 units and to guarantee they won't go more than that, which is less than the property currently allows. And they can also work because they don't have large footprints. They have small footprints that look like single-family homes attached to each other. They can build within the setbacks that are part of the challenge of this site and the fingers that are created because of the wetlands and the floodplains. So it's an ideal site for them to develop. We hope that you feel the same way and appreciate hearing us out. Thank you.
Thank you. The second green card is for Vincent Leone.
Yeah, Vince Leone, I live at 5090 Park Lake Road. I'm here on the same topic. I think the Warcliffe neighborhood has already voiced its concerns about the density of this project and how much traffic it would create on Park Lake Road, as well as the fact that it doesn't really fit with the character of the neighborhood, because the individual indicated it's like 100 and some apartments, and most of the Park Lake Road community is single-family home ownership. Even the two commissioners out of the 9 that voted to let this project proceed recognized that it wasn't really a good fit for this neighborhood, but they felt that given the current zoning, it was the best deal that we could get. I suggest you can get a better deal if you wait. Much of this, because the issue isn't just what the exact zoning is or what the master plan is, it's really what the land and the neighborhood can handle. And as the other individual indicated, there's a lot of wetlands out there, and it's only getting wetter. Because a number of years ago, the drain commissioner improved the drainage system on the west side of Park Lake Road where there was catastrophic flooding, improved the drains, and then enlarged the culvert on the east side of Park Lake Road where I live, and directed all that water our way. So as a result, my neighbor to the north, who has 30 acres in the springtime, he's almost entirely underwater, and I'm surrounded by water. But that's okay, because it's wetlands, and that's what we knew. Other than the mosquitoes, we deal with it. But that's the issue, is that this land can't really handle such density, whether it's the traffic or the wetlands or the drainage. That's why I would encourage you to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission and reject this upzoning request and wait for a better deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board at this time? Then we will move forward to item 6 on our agenda, which is the Township Manager's Report.
Thank you, Supervisor Jackson, members of the board. Update you on a few items that are going on. On December 8th at noon, the highly anticipated ribbon cutting for the MSU to Lake Lansing pathway, phase 1 will occur. If you drive down Hagedorn near the music building, there you'll notice the bridge is complete over the Red Cedar, and we're ready to unveil that project. I want to thank Deputy Manager Opsimer, Giannis O'Shrady, and Niall Nunn for their work on this project. It's been incredible. And also to the county parks for their funding on this project. Fabulous project. When completed, you'll have a pathway from the campus of MSU all the way to Lake Lansing. You'll be receiving, directors are working hard on preparing all the goals and objectives work from 2023 and for 2024 to bring a draft to you. We'll have that to you on December 8th. Welcome the work of Director Clark. Another big hit that Crumble Cookies is now going to be joining Meridian Township over and by the, as best I can describe it, by the UPS store. That'll get you there. The final listening session for the board will occur 1 week from tonight on the 28th. We've had great attendance. I think we've had over 260 attendees at the first 5 sessions. Your final session will occur at Cornell Elementary, 6 o'clock a week from tonight, November 28th. The next police neighborhood meeting will occur on November 30th. I believe that might be Chief Grillo's first neighborhood meeting as chief. Chief Hamill and I are working on the issue with, I believe Director Schmidt's going to be involved in that as well, with the issue we're having with a dormitory at the fire station. We're actually meeting with a local builder tomorrow at 1 o'clock on site, just to get an understanding of what we might be looking at and maybe some anticipated cost eventually when we get to that point. And that we'll have more information when we meet with you for your goal setting as to what we might be looking at in 2024. As I say, it's a good problem to have, right? It's a great challenge. We're hiring a lot more female paramedics, and I compliment Chief Hamill and his leadership for that. Deer management is on a hiatus right now because of the firearm season, but we're at 103. We had a really strong archery season in October leading up to firearm. Beginning December 1, archery will be back in full swing until January 1st. January 1st is when the firearm through the police department and DNR begins, but we are at 103 right now. Public safety recruitment retention program, we're still working on it. We will bring that to you on December 5th. It'll be on for discussion because we believe that's where the supervisor will place it because there's been so many modifications to it from when you first heard it. So we believe December 5th and 12th will be the 2 meetings for the recruitment program. I had a conversation today with Captain Crane, who stopped to my office to say that even the rumblings of this potential program are starting to see some merit, and he's starting to see some developments. And actually, from a couple of internal folks in the township who are not in law enforcement right now. So it's really starting to have a real positive effect for us. Good morning, Meridian. One of the top 3 goals of the board is to expand communication. We've done that through listening sessions. The communication department's done a great job. Rachel and Sam and Denisha have done a great job of expanding that. We took one more step forward today with our first edition of Good Morning Meridian. We've already got a lot of feedback from it, and I hope you get a chance to take a look at that. It's on social media. It's on our website. The flooring project at the police station is underway. We're starting to move stuff, and I expect next week that the flooring will, the actual project will start to see new flooring put in. The ladder truck, which we've had a lot of issues with, we have it back. We're closely monitoring it to see its performance. And I want to credit the leadership at the fire department because, it's so easy not to take on big challenges, right? Kind of sweep them under the table, things are fine, we'll just keep sending the truck in. No, the chief and actually our attorney who's here, Matt Cushel, have taken a strong position against the manufacturer, and I want to credit them for dealing with things head on. The master plan update through Director Schmidt's office, you'll be seeing that in the next month or so before you. You have a copy of the draft that's been provided to you. Nob Hill, you remember the fire that occurred almost a year ago in December, right? They have turned in their building permit to build the building. It will not be two separate buildings now. It'll be one building connected on site. It's going to be a significant project and a significant building permit for us. The M team will have their annual evaluations on December 13th. New Parks and Rec Director, I've made a decision on the selection of a new Parks and Rec Director. I will be not making any formal announcements at this time because we've not made a written offer, a formal offer, but that offer will occur early next week, and I expect to have more information on that on December 5th, but we're very excited about the direction that we're going. I want to thank Trustee Wilson and Chief Grillo and others who have been involved in this school pedestrian safety work that's been going on. We've made great progress on this. Deputy Manager Opsimer's been involved. I believe that the addition of the, what do I want to call them? Pylons might be a good word for the left-hand turn lane, those new pylons, and I want to thank the cooperation we received from Ingham County Roads. That has helped us, I think has made some improvements in front of the schools on Kinawa, but there's also been some work done in the Alderwood area with the Burzak family and others and the leadership that I just mentioned for improvements. And you'll see the fourth quarter budget amendments coming to you here relatively soon. That's my report on what's going on in the manager's office, and unless you have any questions, I'll go back and have a seat.
Board members, do you have questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you.
Item 7 on our agenda is board member reports of activities and announcements. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Well, the big thing that we did a week ago is the stakeholders involved in the public safety of our schools, particularly Okemos. We've had multiple incidents of children having involvement with vehicular incidences, and it's become untenable. So we've been working very hard, and last Monday, we had the stakeholders from the police department, the road commission, Ingham County commissioners, the schools, and ourselves there to come up with some formalized plans. And we have executed over the weekend. We got some work done over in the Cornell Woods area. We have new curb cuts that are being worked on right now. We're going to train everybody coming off the Cornell School property to go a little bit different direction and go up to an intersection rather than trying to cross in the middle. So I'm excited the neighborhood is behind it, the homeowners are behind it in that area. And I really think we're making progress between the pylons that Manager Walsh talked about and other steps we've taken to do striping and lighting and new signage. I really think our kids are going to be a lot safer. So I'm pleased to be part of that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. DeShane.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Last Tuesday, as the manager mentioned, I participated in the 5th listening session. It was another impressive turnout by our very engaged residents. It was standing room only, as we were, and even standing room was at a premium by the end. I'll say right now, Madam Supervisor and the board, we need to do this again next year. Our residents have really responded to these sessions, given us great feedback, and hopefully they feel heard because we did do a lot of listening. I attended the CATA board meeting last week on the 15th with Director Clark. She made the request of CATA, of the CATA board, for the Corridor Improvement Authority TIF, which CATA needs to participate in, as does Ingham County, the township, LCC, and others for it to be a success. The cattle board was very receptive to it. They asked about our affordable housing initiatives along the corridor and other improvements. Route 1 is their biggest route, and they want that corridor to improve as much as we do. They'll take a formal vote next month at the December meeting. I'm confident they'll approve the TIF proposed by Director Clark. And lastly, tax bills and notices are going out next week. They should arrive in our residents' mailboxes on Friday the 1st, Saturday the 2nd at the latest. If you don't have it by the following week, please give me a call. We'll mail you out a duplicate, no charge. The post office used to be, 99.99% delivered all first-class mail, and that's not their top priority these days. Getting your Amazon packages might be their top priority, but first-class mail isn't always. So if you don't get it in the mail, call us. We'll email you a copy, or we'll send you another copy in the mail. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, which is for approval of the agenda. Trustee Wilson,
Move to approve the agenda.
Support.
supported by trustee Wazinski. Any discussion, comments? All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes. And we can then move on to our consent agenda. The consent agenda includes typical communications, minutes of the November 9, 2023 regular township board meeting, the board bills, and item 9D is MAC Legends Indoor Golf LLC at 1982 West Grand River Avenue liquor license application. Discussion, Mr. Treasurer DeShane.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Supported by trustee Hendrickson. All in favor of the roll call, we need a roll call vote for the consent agenda?
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Item 10 is questions for the attorney. We have none listed. We have no public hearings tonight, and so we move on to item 12, action items. Item 12A is recreational marijuana licensing standards. This will be presented to us by Community Planning and Development Director Tim Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So I'm going to give you guys a brief outline of what's in front of you, then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kushel, who authored the majority of this along with his fellow attorneys. So at the October 17th meeting, you may recall, we had an initial discussion on the criteria that staff and the Township Attorney's Office had developed for reviewing the licenses for recreational marijuana. Generally, the board was supportive of the approach we had taken. Most of the discussion was around one specific item, which I will punt for a minute. So after that meeting, what we needed to do is then, and by we I mean Mr. Kushel and his staff, go through and put together the nuts and bolts of the procedures. A lot of this is kind of the dry stuff that we live in on a day-to-day basis, but I want to hit a couple of high notes of how this is going to function once the board decides to open a window. So all of our notices are, everything we send out on this is going to go through email instead of postal service, both for reasons that Treasurer DeShane mentioned, but also we're expecting to be in closer contact with these applicants, especially if there's a piece of information we need, we expect to get it in short order. So we're going to do everything through email. It's very easy paper trail as well. Once the board chooses to open an application window, which you have to do within 3 years of adopting these policies, it will be open for 2 weeks. This will give them enough time to get everything together and get their submittal made. The item I punted on previously, which is the makeup of the review committee, there are a number of options that Mr. Kushel can speak to, but how it's set up right now in the draft that you have, it's 2 board members, 1 planning commissioner, the township manager or his or her designee, the director of community planning and development or his or her designee, and the neighborhoods and economic development director or his or her designee. So that's how it's currently set up, and we'll talk about our options in a minute. The review committee will meet at least twice. One of those will be a public meeting. One of them will be not necessarily public in order to have a more candid discussion about the applications. And then lastly, once we get a recommendation from the review committee back to the township board, there will be a public hearing that will be done in a more formal fashion, although we won't be sending out traditional zoning public notices. It'll be a public notice. We will send it out to all the applicants. We will make it available, but it won't be a traditional zoning ordinance because it's not required. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kushel to hit any other high notes that he wants to discuss at this point.
Thank you, Director Schmidt. Echo those comments. Also key in on the composition of the review committee. That was definitely one of the key points for discussion tonight. And I do also want to draw some attention to the proposed makeup. As presented here, it does have a lot of, I'll say, elected or appointed officials with 2 township board members and 1 planning commission member. Now that gives you a lot of input, but it also adds a lot of people to the commission, which may, hinder getting the meetings set up. You're gonna have more discussion, it's gonna take longer, those sorts of things. It's also, as we then went out and looked at, what have other communities do, granted they're largely cities in the eastern part of the state, but, and Jackson, typically they have either no elected officials or perhaps 1. So kind of as presented here, this would be a lot of elected officials. And there's some benefits to kind of dialing that back. And again, ultimately, as Director Schmidt said, it is still this board's decision, right? And so that's also one reason why slimming down the initial review committee to be a little more efficient doesn't bother me at all, because they're simply condensing information for your review and your decision. We have typically a 10-day notice period, so that's a little longer than some other statutes or more than the Open Meetings Act, 18 hours, for example. So in terms of setting these public meetings, we're going to be putting those notices up on the website or sending emails at least 10 days in advance. And then the other thing to point out is when the applications come in, we'll still use the overlay sorting method that we used in the lottery selection. So we may have, let's say, 2 overlays, because there's 5, right? There's 5. So let's say we have 2 overlays where there's only 1 applicant for whatever reason. And then we have 3 overlays that have, more than 1. Those single applicants, the review committee as drafted has a little bit of discretion. They can send it on to the board, or they can do some review themselves. And they also have the option to complete the review of those single applications before they move on to the competitive ones. Sort of work through the easier work where you have less moving parts. So I think that's a good option for the review committee. This board may want to make it mandatory that they offer a recommendation even on those 1-of-1 situations. But at least those are slimmed down, less complex because you have less moving parts. And on the review criteria themselves, they essentially track, what we discussed last time. We did strengthen some of the employment criteria and local economic criteria, which is on pages 4 and 5. That was in part as a result of a case that just came out this month, where the Court of Appeals upheld some very strong economic review criteria that another municipality was using. So again, we feel very comfortable using that. We did have some language in the initial proposal, but we've sort of come back and tailored the review that criteria to kind of what the court has seen before. And at risk of belaboring too much, the one piece I do want to also highlight is the initial review of the committee kind of outside of the public eye. That's not a non-transparency standard, it's an efficiency standard. These applications have hundreds of pages, and we're gonna get at least 5 of them, potentially,
7.
potentially 15, maybe 20. We don't know how much interest is out there, how many applications are gonna come in. Getting through that volume of material, being able to figure out what it was done well, where they need more information, what kind of dialogue both this board and the review committee wants to have with an applicant. We need to get through that volume of paperwork efficiently, and the most efficient way to do that is to be able to get some quick meetings together of the committee where we can sort through and hammer out the different components of the application, figure out where the pinch points are, and then that's when the deliberation can come out. Again, not knowing how many applications we get, we can't speculate, it's very hard to speculate how many meetings either the review committee or this board will take to come to an ultimate conclusion. But the more pinch points there are, then I anticipate there being more meetings. So the structure we have here, we're confident that it complies with OMA, given the cases that have preceded. There's been 3 cases so far. The Court of Appeals has not found any OMA violations, despite those claims being rather common by the marijuana bar and the losing marijuana applicants, basically. But the court has affirmed the municipality standards. They've affirmed structures that we've laid out here. So I think it's a good mix of getting some efficiency, especially on the front end, and then being transparent and having that deliberation of both the review committee as they arrive at a final recommendation, and then as well, of course, this board's, all of its efforts and its actual decision being, of course, made in the public.
Okay. So there's several points that we need to clarify. And the first looks to me like the question of how the committee is made up.
That is the primary point from our perspective.
Okay, and what we have before us is a proposal where there are 2 elected officials, 1 appointed official from the planning commission, and 3 staff members?
Correct.
Directors at director level.
Yes.
Board members, your thoughts? Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, and thank you to the 2 of you for, and your teams for putting these together. I know we've spent a long road. My question about the review committee, well, 2 questions about the review committee specifically, is who would, for those, ambiguous members of the board or planning commission, who would be deciding who those people are? I didn't see any mechanism in there to refer to that.
It would be this board.
This board would choose a panel.
Yes.
Okay. And then the second question is, there's a whole section in there about if there's ties and whatnot. It seems as though we may be setting ourselves up for a situation where there will be many more ties than necessary because we have an even number of people proposed for the review committee. It seems to me like we could preclude a lot of possible ties by having a 5-person committee or a 7-person committee as opposed to 6. I don't know who that 5th person, who would drop off to be 5 or who we would add to 7. But it seems to me that we could save ourselves some heartache by finding a way to an odd number of panelists.
Before I move to the next question, is this a review committee going to review on the basis of the 10 points. Will the 10 points of characterization be a part of their job?
Yes, the review committee will use the same criteria that the board will use for its ultimate decision, and I would also anticipate that they would present it in a format similar to what the board would utilize in its format. As we discussed previously, using excellent standards, this had great compliance for these reasons, versus they get 10 out of 10 points.
And so it seems to me that there would be less opportunity of these tie votes with that much variation in the in the qualifications. Agree, disagree?
On the,
And by the way, and so in the end, they will send one summarizing, characterizing report to the board, which means a compilation of all of these grades from the committee participants.
so the way I envisioned it working would be that each application would have a summary. So if you had 10 applications, you'll get 10 summaries, one for each application.
Right.
If you also desired an overarching matrix, we could make that more explicit, because it would be possible. On the point of ties, certainly an even number of members raises that possibility much more than an odd number. But I'm not concerned about it, because again, that body is just making recommendations. So if they end up with, and if there is a tie, then they'll just both be equally recommended. There's no tension for that body to resolve the tie. That's the township board's job, because you're making the decision, or go with a third candidate, as you review the applications. So I'm less concerned about them reaching ties or ties coming to this body. I still think the yeoman's work of distilling down those hundreds of pages to coming to, these, let's say 10 applicants out of 15, really stand out. We recommend issuing these 2 one-of-ones. We see no problems. And then we really highlight these other applicants who are really outperforming. And plus then maybe you'd want to look at these areas, because they'll have noted where they saw maybe weaker spots or stronger spots that lend to awarding a permit. And then that makes your job efficient, because you can look at 50 pages instead of 300.
Okay. I think I saw Trustee Wilson next.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. What I'm hearing pretty clearly from you, Attorney Kuschel, is that a smaller group is more manageable. People are available. We all know the situation. We're trying to get 6 people in a room at the same time is very challenging. So I think I also, not only is it the tie issue, but I think it's more the representation on the body. To me, it would make sense that we have the 3 staff members, the 3 department heads that you have mentioned, and 2 board members. Board members have different opinions about recreational marijuana, so we might be able to balance that a little bit. And once again, I just remind everybody that recreational marijuana is the vote of the people, and so we are executing what the people have asked us to do. Thank you, Madam Supervisor.
Okay. Could I ask you if that is in support of or not of the Planning Commission?
I would say that we do not need to have a planning commissioner there. I think the representation from the board is more important, because they bring the issue back to the entire body.
Okay. Mr. DeShane.
I like the idea of a pared down body as well. There's a lot of work to be done, and the smaller the work group, the more effective it can be done. This idea of not having board members in there is a new one to me. I might need some more time to think about it. I see trustee Wilson's point that the board should have representatives because it's going to be a board decision. At the same time, by leaving board members off the review committee, all 7 of us will have the same fresh perspective when the recommendation comes before us. I'm thinking this is going to be many hours of work. I mean, tens and tens and tens of hours of work. And I'm not sure if we pay our board members enough to give up or do a quarter-time job for a month or two, which it could be even more than that. So that's my opinion on slimming down the board. The review committee, I like the idea. Director Schmidt, do you have enough staff, current staffing levels to do this job properly right now?
Yeah, I think we're gonna be okay. I think how I've anticipated reviewing this is I think what we're gonna do is split the applications between my 2 existing planners to review for completeness, make sure that that's what we did with the medical even, just in the January submittal window where we had the 4 resubmittals. Each took half and make sure that we've got everything there. I will likely serve on this committee as opposed to designating someone specifically. And so it will, tens of hours is probably right. I mean, it really, again, don't have a crystal ball, can't tell you how many are gonna be submitted. I have a guess, but, until we open a window, we won't know. So it will take some time.
Next question, is there an independent consultant that helps communities with these decisions that we could think about hiring that might be the tiebreaker and a proxy for the board? And in some ways, a paid independent person to do this work on behalf of the board. Is there such services available in the state of Michigan that you know of?
Well, I'm not aware of a specific consultant that would dabble in this field. I mean, I think if we went down that road, what we would be looking at is bringing on a planning consultant, whether it's a Carlisle Wortman or, a land plan or someone of that nature to sort of be that third party. I know there are some consultants out there that have dabbled in specific to marijuana issues, but they tend to be more on the side of the industry as opposed to the community. And so I don't know that, there's no one that's coming to top of mind quickly, short of going to just a normal planning consultant.
Yeah, and I second those thoughts. I'm not aware of any third-party consultant that does that work on behalf of municipalities. We do it, our firm does it for other clients, not so much making recommendations, but breaking down the applications, doing that completeness review, letting them know where weak spots are, where they're, might want to push back for more information. So we're familiar with that process and helping communities there. And it is also another possibility. Some of the case law, communities used one official. In that case, it was a city manager as the review committee, and then the city manager himself, appointed his own subcommittee to help him, and together that group then made a recommendation to the council. So we do anticipate and permit for the Township Attorney's Office to assist the committee. We did not elect to recommend sitting on the committee directly, although some communities have done that as well. We're certainly happy to, and to provide that extra manpower or just provide third-party manpower to the committee, as needed.
And just to build on that, I mean, I think how we anticipate, we've talked about this a little bit internally, and right, so we'll do our initial completeness review. We'll have a couple of one-of-ones, I'm guessing, just based on where the overlays are, who the property owners are, right? So I think what we'll probably do is then in those areas where we may have more than one applicant, ship them over to the Township Attorney's Office for a more deeper dive. What weaknesses do you guys see that we need to be aware of up front? Then go into the committee review with sort of my staff's review, Township Attorney's review, and now let's get into the nitty-gritty. So we're gonna try and wash these as best we can before they get to the committee, no matter who's sitting on it, so that you are getting as unvarnished of a view as possible of what they've submitted to us.
Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. appreciate what Treasurer DeShane said. I would venture to say for efficacy, a smaller group would be a little better. And I liked what Attorney Kushel said about allowing the staff to synthesize and then present to the board as a whole without having maybe representation from the board at that specific, we're all getting the same information. So I would support that as well, leaving a planning commission on as a representative.
Leaving the plan, kind
So 3 staff and planning commissioner?
Yeah.
In terms of help in interpreting the applications, we have already permitted at least 2 levels from the planning commission access to this process, or not?
In theory, based on what's laid out right now, yes. Yes.
Okay. Further comments? Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to pull us back a little bit to the underlying root of this. This is just relating to the review, a competitive review criteria for the permit for recreational marijuana.
Correct.
Refresh my memory. This then would go in front of the planning commission and the board through special use permit, or would not?
It would, yes. So this issues a conditional approval, which then opens the door to the site plan process. And then the site plan would be, or the special use permit and site plan process. Then that would complete in the normal course. And then once that is all done and they're ready to open, the director would issue the final permit, basically when they open their doors.
Okay. So with that being said, the board has input under this process. Assume that we are not on the review committee. The board would have input when the applications are recommended to the board by the review committee, whomever represents them. And then the board would also be, the planning commission would weigh in with 2 meetings, and then the board would weigh in with 2 meetings on the special use permit. We'll be seeing these projects a lot. Maybe the easiest way is to keep the planning commissioners and the township board, who will otherwise be seeing this several times in the future, off of the review committee, and let staff make a recommendation to us on that. Just a thought to throw out there.
Is that a motion?
Not yet, but thank you.
Comments? Trustee Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I concur with Trustee Hendrickson. That seems like the most expeditious way to get things done. First review by staff, then review by the planning commission, then review by the board. That makes perfect sense to me.
Mr. DeShane?
I'm going to make a motion that Section 2 Review Committee, that we strike from Section B, Review Committee shall be made up of, we strike 1 and 2, the 2 members of the Township Board, and 1 member of the Planning Commission.
Support.
Supported. Further comments? No. So the motion is to strike the 2 board members and the planning commission representative from the review committee. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair will vote yes, and the motion passes. Which is the way I think things usually happen around here anyway.
Good point.
The next question that I have in my mind had to do with the, how a single applicant in a single district is treated differently from an applicant in a competitive district?
So from staff's perspective, and I think Attorney Kushel may have other thoughts. From staff's perspective, it's really just a matter of taking care of an issue and getting it off our plates.
Yes.
Right, if there's no truly competitive review in District 1, we're gonna review it for completeness. We're gonna scrub it by the attorneys to make sure there's nothing we're missing. And then we'll have the committee get together, and make the recommendation to move it on to the board, one way or another, whether it's a positive or a negative, because it's also, the other benefit is the board will not get bombarded with them all at once then. So we can, unfortunately, we're gonna drip feed them to you over the course of probably several months, but that way it's not one meeting and you have to make 8 decisions on marijuana licenses or whatever it is. And so that's really, from our perspective, the only way it's treated differently is that if it's by itself, we're just gonna move it along and be done with it. And get the paperwork completed from our end.
But if you move them along, they don't have the benefit of the review of the 10 criteria.
Oh, we'll still review them, absolutely.
Okay,
But we're just gonna, that'll be the first one we handle,
Gotcha.
right? Then we'll just get that one out the door, get it done, move it on.
okay.
So that it doesn't, because if there's another district that has 5 applicants and that takes us 3 or 4 meetings to review, I mean, it's not that it's unfair to anyone, but it at least gets one of them moving along.
Okay.
So we can not clog up all of our systems with the same thing over and over again.
Okay, I appreciate that. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So having just this document in a vacuum left me with one other question, which is the appeal process. It says in section 3, applicants may appeal the township's board's approval of applications as outlined in the ordinance. And you'll forgive me for not diving through the township ordinance. Can you remind me what the appeal process looks like?
Certainly, briefly, it would essentially create a third-party hearing officer to review the facts and then make a recommendation back to the board. If I'm frustrated, I don't think my application was scored correctly, there was some aspect that was misrepresented or whatever, I could claim that appeal. The same material that the review committee and the township board had to make its decision would then go to a third-party review individual that would be selected by the board. And there's a lot of recommendations or best practices rather that, we can give to the board at that time in terms of selecting someone who's an independent-minded individual who can then take a fresh look at everything. Then they would make a recommendation, whether or not they think an error was made. But then ultimately, it's for the township board to make that, again, the final conclusion of, hey, you know what, actually, we see that point, we totally missed page 10. Or no, that doesn't change our mind, it's really the same information. You don't think we considered it, but we did consider it and affirm your decision.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was, if we were to approve this document as amended this evening, is there a recommended date for when we would open an application window at this time?
I will stick to my schedule that I've put out there all along. I would recommend that you open the window 1 to 2 months from now so that the applicants have an opportunity to understand what they need to provide, because we will get applicants, most likely, that are outside of the current medical applicants. Also, we're in the holiday season, so getting traction right now, getting everything in, if there's a deficiency, we're just setting ourselves up for failure. So there's certainly opportunity to go back to that second Tuesday in January date one more time. But that's probably the earliest I would recommend it. Because if you told me to open a window right now, even just from a practical perspective, we gotta go through all the forms and change all the language on the forms. It's not recreational, not medical, and there's just some back of house stuff that needs to happen before we can say, okay, here's your application. And presumably, some of these people are going to take some time, hopefully update their information, from when they originally submitted in 2019 and get us good information now, so we don't have to do a bunch of deficiencies.
And the application window could theoretically be opened as long as we see fit. Yes?
It's 2 weeks.
It is 2 weeks.
It is 2 weeks.
Very good. Okay.
Right.
With that, then, Madam
I
City.
apologize, it's at least 2 weeks.
Right.
I read that sentence wrong.
So yes, you could do it for as long as you want. And then the document itself doesn't give a date, precisely because you could have multiple windows
Sure.
throughout time.
Thank you. So with that, and I don't know if there's any other questions, but I'll make a motion so we can at least get rolling on the full body of this. I would move to adopt the procedures and standards for accepting applications and the competitive review process under Chapter 40, authorizing adult use marijuana establishments as amended.
Support.
Supported by trustee Wazinski. Further comments?
No, I think this is the culmination of a lot of hard work by a lot of people, a vote of the people of Meridian Township, and about 3-4 years on this topic, plus the medical marijuana before it. So I think it has been a long road, but I think we're nearing the end.
Trustee Wazinski.
I would just concur. Lots of work on this. I really appreciate listening to the board. I know it's taken a while to get us here. I appreciate all of Attorney Kuschel's input on this, and Director Schmidt, thank you.
Mr. Duchesne.
Thank you. We are doing, as trustee Wilson said, we are honoring the vote of the people. It was a very close vote, but the majority voted to continue to allow recreational marijuana. In fact, it was a 7-0 vote, so the board in the unified voice did that. Nonetheless, this is a new industry in Michigan. It's a volatile industry. 3 things can point to that: Rick Johnson, Sky Mint, and the price of marijuana. Rick Johnson's former director of the regulatory agency is going to prison for 5 years for taking bribes from the industry. That has a really ugly start for this industry. Sky Mint, the Google or Amazon industry, the Cadillac of it is still in receivership because they overbuilt, overanticipated, and is hanging on for dear life. And the prices had already fallen by half or more. And then last week or 2 weeks ago, Ohio approved their own recreational marijuana. And a lot of our industry sales here in the southern third of the township, the way we used to go to Ohio for fireworks, they've been coming to Michigan to buy marijuana. And when we legalized fireworks, I'm sure it really hurt Ohio's fireworks sales, and their legalizing marijuana is going to hurt our sales, no doubt. So the industry faces further volatility. I do have some specific questions that about the process. And on page 53 and 54, you list the review factors. Number 3 being whether the applicant and the stakeholders have demonstrated competency in business operations, have a good reputation in the community and marijuana industry, viewed in the light of the history of compliance with state and local laws and regulations, whether the applicant or its stakeholders had or currently hold any other state-regulated license, including a CRA-issued license or a liquor license, whether the applicant or its stakeholders currently operate or previously operated any other marijuana or state-regulated businesses, reviews and references related to any ongoing business operations, and other information on documentation that demonstrates a good reputation and good moral character. I really like this language. You thought this through and you covered a lot there. So thank you for that. A question for you, Director Schmidt, is how deep can you go with your staff? I mean, we're going to investigate companies, obviously. They're easy to look up, but individuals that might have reformed in a new company or a new partnership, how do we ferret out that information to make sure while the company's changed, the individual is still someone that we would have found some issues with the criteria we've put out here?
Yeah, I suspect that that's going to involve the attorney's office in terms of doing that second deep dive. Obviously, we can track LLCs and corporations all day and at least get to the root of who the people are that are involved. And then I think we will probably turn it over for a deeper dive once we're comfortable knowing who they are. of course, there's also gonna be the ones, like the applicants that are, it's very clear who it is. It's Jars Cannabis, like they are applying, and these are the people, this has always been the people, and very easy to look them up in the CRA compliance database and find out if they've had any issues. You know, I get the weekly emails from the state in terms of penalties and license revocations, which are becoming, they're not common, but they happen more than I recall. So it won't be hard to find the names of the corporations. I think once we get into the people, that's where we're gonna look for some assistance.
That same deep dive, I think, will be necessary for 7, looking at the financial viability of these companies, sufficient financial resources to implement and carry out their proposed business plan and operations, and their business plan. I would think that's going to also require maybe a CPA type dive into that business history.
Yeah, I think that one's really gonna depend on how much someone's kind of hanging their hat on, you know. We're the new guys, we have this new model of doing things. I mean, obviously, the ones that have done this before have shown they have a model that works, and they have the ability to do so. But, yeah, that's gonna be an interesting question, I think. That one is, I think, the most interesting one to me.
My third concern is with number 10, whether the applicant has planned community outreach for the township and its residents, including but not limited to planned educational services. That's the phrase that bothers me. Charitable and philanthropic activity, community improvement, or other programs that will directly benefit the township services, or improve the health, safety, and welfare of the township and its residents. You know, in the 50s, tobacco companies were really good at getting doctors to go on TV and tell the public how safe smoking was. It was relieved anxiety, calmed the nerves. It was really the perfect antidote to a busy day. This is before there was any research on tobacco. And by the early 60s, all that was proven to be not only wrong, but horribly wrong. And because marijuana has been a federally prohibited Class 1 drug, there's been allowed no research at all on marijuana right now. So when you say planned educational services, my concern is that industry representatives come in and they've got an industry study comparable to the tobacco studies before tobacco was really understood. And say, yeah, this calms your nerves and relieves anxiety, but we don't really know that because we have no data on that. I would hope the educational services would be like those of a alcohol provider to say, you know, moderately drink at the early age and that kind of stuff, and not that promoting marijuana as the new wonder drug of the 21st century. That's my concern there. And then my other third question was regarding the appeal process. Thank you for answering that. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay. Anyone else? I would just like to add that Treasurer DeShane has recited for us much of the negative aspects of this industry in the the change in prices, the failed, but I believe what we're looking at now and what we're trying to put together benefits from knowledge about those kinds of things. And I think by the time these applications come to the board, we know about all of these kinds of things, and we can ask questions and raise issues to try to protect ourselves from any dangers that are there. I have a motion on the table. Mr. Hendrickson, would you recite that motion for me, please?
Of course, Madam Supervisor. I move to adopt the procedures and standards for accepting applications and competitive review process under Chapter 40, authorizing adult use marijuana establishments as amended.
As amended. Okay.
Support. Again.
And you support it again. Okay, so we need a vote at this point. Let's do a roll call vote.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes,
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Hendrickson.
I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent if we would look at opening a window at the date specified. I don't know if that has to wait until a future meeting or if we should take care of that now, since it's a relatively housekeeping matter.
And we've heard Mr. Schmidt's ideas on how long that should take at the least, right?
Right.
You have another motion to offer at this time?
If it's allowable, I'd be happy to.
I think it would be, we'll see.
Okay. So I guess without the text, I'll freestyle it here. I move that the board set an initial application window under the procedures and standards for accepting applications and competitive review process as of opening January 9th and closing January 23rd.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion purposes.
All right. Trustee Wilson seconds the motion. Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. We've heard from staff that this is the time that would be, that they'd be able to accept applications. And this, to me, is just saving us, putting this on the agenda at some point in the next month, when we've got plenty of other things that we'll be dealing with. And I think it's just a matter of efficiency at that point.
Trustee Wilson?
I have a bit of concern about setting the date at this time. We have some pent-up demand issues, such as our goal and objectives and the manager's review that we need to do expeditiously, sometime potentially in December, January, February. I'm thinking that maybe we could defer this. And is it up to us to set the window?
Yes.
It is definitely up to us.
All right.
And to be clear, if I may, Madam Supervisor, this is simply to allow the applications to come in to the township, after which the staff would review, the attorney would review, the committee would review, and then we would see it. The township board wouldn't be seeing any applications, I assume, for several months after the initial window would close, because those reviews would take time and those meetings, as we discussed this evening, would take a while too.
I have, again, a bit of concern of doing it so closely after the holidays, because I would presume that the applicants then would be forced to start working on this during the holidays in order to meet that window of the 9th, I believe, is the first day.
But
I-
I would urge you to note that many of these applicants have been waiting for years for this. So my guess would be they're ready. Mr. DeShane?
I'd like to ask the question to Director Schmidt. Will you be ready to open the window on January 9th, or would you prefer to have a date to be defined later in December?
No, I mean, we will absolutely be, from our perspective, it's a bit of housekeeping paperwork that we can knock out next week, have it ready to go on the website, probably the first week of December. What I would recommend, I have two recommendations. One, given that we are going to open the window covering the federal holiday in January, I would recommend extending it to the 26th, just to make sure we get a solid 2 weeks in there. And I would also recommend that the board state, pursuant to their policies, the time and place that the applications will be accepted. My recommendation would be no later than 5 o'clock on the 26th, and that the application shall be submitted to the township clerk's office for proper acceptance and date stamping.
Mr. Hendrickson? I believe that sounds like a,
Yeah, I guess
Changing your-
someone up here would have to move to amend that, right?
okay.
So, can I amend my own motion? I'm not sure if I can.
I don't believe you can.
I'll amend it.
Okay.
Did we say the 8th, on Monday, the 8th?
The
The
9th
9th
to the
want to
to the
26th.
26th.
I move to amend the motion that the period for acceptance of applications would commence on Tuesday, January 9th and end at 5 PM on January 26th. And that all applications would be submitted through the clerk's office? Yes,
Support.
that's it.
Support?
Support that amendment.
Let's say, all in favor of the motion to,
Amend.
to amend the original motion, please say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, so no? All right, motion passes?
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, and so the original motion now is to start the process.
To open the window on January 9th and close the window on Friday, January 26th at 5 PM, with all applications having been sent to the township clerk's office.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, opposed?
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. I think we've gotten that cleared up. Questions? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Okay.
We now go to item 12B, ordinance 2023-07, fire protection and emergency services cost recovery update, introduced by Fire Chief Mike Hamill.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor, Board. So a couple weeks ago, we were here and the question was asked in regards to the A and B, which was on the form you got for this meeting in Section 18 in regards to house fires and car fires. And so A was rewritten and it's in the new language. B is written in the new language with the exception of they forgot to pull house out. So I will have to have the attorney pull the house out. So in B towards in the first sentence there, almost to the end, just before multifamily. Because that was the question, was the house fire, if I remember correctly. So that's the update. So questions in regards to your thoughts, were, still any concerns or?
Mr. DeShane.
Just for background information again for the board, you're finding that we're responding to more and more calls because private ambulances companies are not responding anymore. We're being called into places where they should have a contract for ambulance services, they do not. And we don't have the authority to properly charge for these services that we're providing essentially for free because the private companies have gone out of business or just not providing the level of service that these private homes, for example, are requiring.
Yeah, it's more the assisted living centers.
Excuse me, I meant private
Yeah.
assisted living.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yes. And that's spelled out in the ordinance pretty well as our fee schedule. It was more or less, if I remember correctly, the last meeting was A and B that Trustee Hendrickson brought up.
Other questions? Mr. Hendrickson.
So I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you asking us not to vote on this so you can have the attorneys update the?
So it's been updated.
It has been updated.
With the exception of they forgot to take house out. So I do have the new ordinance that they rewrote after our last meeting. I emailed him the next day.
Right.
Unfortunately, the copy I sent you guys with this did not remove the house. So I'm still gonna have to get that removed, but it's ready to go if you like it.
We could amend it here
Right.
at
Yes,
the
we can
table, and
amend it.
then you wouldn't have to incur any more attorney's fees, which we'd appreciate.
Okay, got it.
So first, to amend it, the ordinance and proposal before us,
I think,
and
is
then
it just
to
the one
vote to
spot?
approve it.
I think it's only in B.
It's just in the one spot.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to approve the updated cost recovery ordinance amending Chapter 18 of the Code of Charter Township and Meridian to include the addition of Article 3, Fire Protection and Emergency Services, and authorize the clerk and supervisor to sign the ordinance with the following change. In section 1832, subsection B, striking the word house and the following comma from that subsection.
Support.
Supported by trustee
Wilson.
Wilson. Yes.
Yes. I appreciate, Chief Hamel, that you brought this back to us with the intended change to clarify that, and also that you helped to allay some concerns that this is not just, your average fire that's responded to, and that our residents aren't being charged when they get into an auto accident that's run of the mill. This is for special circumstances and extenuating circumstances, and for that reason, I'll be supportive of this. Thank you.
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I too feel that I can support this, this motion, because you have clarified this is to protect the township in terms of being able to bill for services that are being rendered, and at this time, we're not receiving those revenues. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Mr. DeShane.
And I'd also like to praise you and your team for the number of calls you've done. I know with our meetings with medical management or billing services, our billings are up significantly this year. I know that's due a lot of hustle, a lot of good work by your team. And it helps cover the costs for additional firefighters and for our new striker contract as well.
Thank you.
Good work all around.
Okay, we'll take a vote at this point, unless there are further questions. The motion is to approve the updated cost recovery ordinance, amending Chapter 18 of the Code of the Charter Township of Meridian to include the addition of Article 3, Fire Protection and Emergency Service, and authorize the clerk and supervisor to sign the ordinance following the specific changes noted by, specific change noted by trustee Hendrickson. Shall we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Sunland,
Yes.
trustee Wilson,
Yes.
trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes,
Trustee DeShane,
Yes.
trustee Hendrickson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
thank you.
Thank you, appreciate
Chief Hamill. Next is item 12C, Community Senior Center request for proposal. And trustee Wilson will bring us up to date on that issue.
Yes, thank you, Madam Supervisor. As we have discussed at multiple meetings, we are in the process of evaluating whether we can bring a community center, incorporating a senior center to this community. So we have a task force that has been operating since February, meeting on a biweekly basis. We've come to the conclusion that it is now time to bring in a professional company to assist us in looking at all the issues that surround building such a center or repurposing an existing building for this, to have a center. So we talked about this last meeting, and I'm now ready to bring you a motion. And the motion is to approve the recommendation of the Community/Senior Center Task Force to engage Progressive AE to provide community outreach planning and design work for the potential new Meridian Township Community and Senior Center.
Support.
Supported by Treasurer DeShane. Trustee Wilson.
This is the next logical step in the process. This particular company has strengths in building municipal facilities. They have done senior centers, they've done other municipal projects, and we had a lot of confidence, having interviewed 5 companies, that this is the company that will most clearly match what we want to do, and also we were struck by their creativity. We need to think outside the box if we're going to do something that is the new model of what community centers should be, a multi-generational approach to how this facility would operate. So I appreciate your support so far with this project.
Thank you. Mr. DeShane.
I want to point out that the senior center, community center task force did not make this decision as a whole. It was a subcommittee of it. They spent the time necessary to review each of these applications. I'm confident with the recommendation to the larger task force. And I think it's important to note that we're hiring this firm because we don't know what this new senior center, community center is going to be. We are open to various concepts, locations. There's almost everything big is yet to be decided. The only thing we're making a decision, this is the first hard decision we're making or tangible decision we're making to hire a firm to help us with future decisions. But it's all right now going to be it's waiting on the input from our consultants and then the public when we present these ideas to the larger community. If the community doesn't buy into this concept, that we will not have a new senior center, community center. If it does, we could have a great one, but the community has to get behind this and like the work that the task force and this consultant bring forward sometime next year.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I appreciate Treasurer DeShane's comments. I think that, the senior center as we know it today is slated to be gone in several years. I think the first step, the first decision that this group made was that we feel that we don't want to leave our residents without an option. And that's why the task force was put together. We want to explore all the options, and we've gotten to the point where professional help will help us to do so. And I'm excited to support this motion this evening to bring in those experts to help us put pen to paper and see what the future might hold. I'll also point out that the $31,750 that we're talking about here is not new expenditures that the board is making. This is part of a subset, this is a subset of the money that was set aside last year of federal ARP money that we indicated we thought might be used for a project like this. So this is not new spending. This is simply allocating money that we had already allocated for this for a specific purpose. So I'll be supporting this evening.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the recommendation of the Community Senior Center Task Force to engage Progressive AE to provide community outreach, planning, design work for the potential new Meridian Township Community Senior Center. We need a roll call vote for this as well.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. At this point, item 12D is recommendations for reappointments to the boards and commissions in Meridian Township. And I think there are about 10 or 11 of them. What I'll do is make each recommendation and have the board vote on the by voice vote. So the first is to, I move to reappoint Leslie Charles to the Communications Commission for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2016.
2026.
2026, I'm sorry.
Support.
Mr. DeShane, do you have comments to make in that
No.
regard? So all in favor of the reappointment of Leslie Charles to the Communications Commission, 3 years, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
The second is move to reappoint Kathleen Langhouse to the Community Resources Commission for a 2-year term ending 12/31/2025.
Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. Comments?
Kathleen Langholz has been a member of the CRC for a long period of time and is liaison to that group, and I attend every meeting. She really serves us ably, and I'm pleased that she's going to continue.
Thank you. So All in favor of the motion to reappoint Kathleen Halls to the Community Resources Commission for 2 years, please say yes.
Yes.
2 years?
2 years.
Ending 12/31/2025. Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right. Third is move to reappoint Bradley Brogren to the East Lansing Meridian Water and Sewer Authority for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2026.
Support.
Comments?
Yes, Brad Brogan is a retired water engineer who now advises us, provides his professional expertise as on the Water Sewer Authority. In his spare time, he also is the former director of the Meridian Historical Village. So Brad is extremely involved in the community. We're really lucky that he's willing to serve for another 3-year term.
Okay. So the motion again is to reappoint Bradley Brogan to the East Lansing Meridian Water and Sewer Authority for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2026. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next is move to reappoint Kimberly Thompson to the Economic Development Corporation for a 6-year term ending 12/31/2029.
Second.
The motion is seconded by trustee Sunland. You have a comment to make?
I would have to say that I serve on the Economic Development Corporation, and Kimberly Thompson has really done a good job just kind of jumping in and heading up that, that commission. So I support her being reappointed.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of the motion to reappoint Kimberly Thompson to the EDC for a 6-year term ending in 12/31/2029, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Next is the motion to reappoint John Sarver to the Environmental Commission for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2026.
Support.
Supported by trustee Wazinski. Comments?
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor. John has served on the Environmental Commission, and I think many other commissions, or at least a few, much longer than I have been around. So he's been such an advocate. He was a chair for Environmental Commission for, I think, maybe even more than once, and is, of course, our advocate for clean energy, specifically solarized Meridian. So I'm very excited that John is continuing to serve on Environmental Commission.
Thank you. Other comments? So the motion is to reappoint John Sarver to the Environmental Commission for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2026. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No.
Motion carries 6-0.
The chair did vote yes.
Oh, sorry.
Next is move to reappoint Steve Thomas, Yuman Lee, Jamie Hiller, and Kathleen Fay to the Land Preservation Advisory Board for a 4-year term ending 12/31/2027.
Support.
Yes, comments?
Thank you, Supervisor. Each one of these folks are fantastic, and this is a really great advisory board to be a liaison to. I will say Steve Thomas has now won 2 volunteer awards. UMAN is instrumental in our watershed management. Jamie is the chair currently and has a lot of passion, and Kathleen brings a lot of Kathy brings a lot to that team as well. So I'm very excited that they are all reappointed.
Thank you. Mr. DeShane.
We heard at our listening sessions from many residents how important they feel the land preservation effort is. They don't want us to stop preserving the land or doing good stewardship for that land, and I'm very capable. I'm sure these 4 appointees will handle that task very capably for the board.
Other comments? So the motion is to reappoint Steve Thomas, Yuman Lee, Jamie Hiller, and Kathleen Fay to the Land Preservation Advisory Board for a 4-year term ending 12/31/2026. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Next is move to reappoint Joyce Van Coovering to the Local Officials Compensation Commission for a 2-year term ending 12/31/2025. Mr. Hendrickson,
Support.
comment? Any further comments?
Yes, I served on the LOCC for a number of years through 2 different cycles, and I know Joyce, and she brings a very thoughtful approach to her deliberations with that body, which I think is welcome.
Thank you. Other comments? The motion is to reappoint Joyce Van Coovering to the Local Officials Compensation Commission for a 2-year term ending 12/31/2025. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Thank you. Chair votes yes. And we
Motion carries 6-0.
move to, the motion is to reappoint Tanya Pratt and Joyce Van Coovering to the Pension Board for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2026.
Support.
Mr. DeShane, comments?
No, this isn't a typo. Joyce Van Covering's name is twice in a row. She may even serve on a 3rd commission. I believe Tanya Pratt does as well serve on 2 commissions. She, for a long time, served on the Local Officials Compensation Board. This is an important board. It's not the main pension, the MERS pension, but it's our former township managed pension board. We met them 3 weeks ago, and they have a large endowment to manage to make sure all of our current retirees are properly paid the pension payments we promised them years ago.
Further comments? This motion is to reappoint Tanya Pratt and Joyce Van Coovering to the Pension Board for a 3-year term ending 12/31/2026. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
And finally, I move to confirm the supervisory's reappointment of Peter Trezise, Brandon Brooks, William McConnell, and Christina Snyder to the Planning Commission for a 3-year terms ending 12/31/2026.
Support.
Supported. Mr. Hendrickson, comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Supervisor. I also served with 3 of the 4 of these planning commissioners when I was on the Planning Commission a couple of years ago. And I know them pretty well. They do excellent work. Peter Trezise, we saw at our last meeting accepting an award here, and he brings a very conscientious approach to all of the Planning Commission issues that he sees. Bill McConnell, who I also served with, he is very well known for both being a stickler for the minutes and also bringing an eye toward environmental issues on that commission, and we appreciate his input there. And then Christina Snyder, who I only crossed over with briefly, but when we served together, she brought a very different perspective than had been seen on the Planning Commission. And as you know from your time on the Planning Commission, Madam Supervisor, a multitude of opinions is a good thing, not a bad thing. And while I don't know Mr. Brooks well, I think he's the one who took my role on that commission. And I'm assuming he's giving everyone the same hard time that I used to.
I think so. So the motion is to confirm the supervisor's reappointment of Peter Trezise, Brandon Brooks, William McConnell, and Christina Snyder to the Planning Commission for 3-year terms ending 12/31/2026. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. The chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. We now move to item 12E, resolution in support of Small Business Saturday. I think this will be presented by Director Clark.
Well, good evening, members of the board. Tonight in your Township Board packet, you have a letter, a communication from an organization asking for your support through proclamation and resolution of Small Business Saturday. Small Business Saturday is celebrated in the United States the Saturday after our Thanksgiving holiday, so this will be Saturday, November 25th of this year. A little bit of background about Small Business Saturday. It is what communities do to encourage our wonderful residents to support our one-of-a-kind small mom and pop. And small is less than 100 employees and less than $1 million in revenue. And I think I can think of a lot of business owners out there that's like, yep, that's definitely me. Last year, we had a very successful bonus bucks program, which encouraged our residents to be able to get some gift cards, and essentially they got one or multiple extra gift cards based on the amount that they were able to contribute during our program. This year, we participated and hosted and celebrated our first in a decade Meridian Area Business Exposition. So we brought that back for our small businesses, and a portion of the funding we raised through that expo will go back into our bonus bucks program. So very excited about being able to create a mechanism of funding that goes directly to shop small, shop local initiatives in Meridian Township. So we have a resolution presented in front of you for just to recognize, celebrate, be proud, encourage and support the 1,800 plus businesses of our community. And tonight we are asking for your show of support for Shop Small and Shop Local Small Business Saturday, November 25th, 2023.
Thank you.
I move to adopt the attached resolution in support of Small Business Saturday.
Support.
Supported by trustee Wazinski. Trustee Sunderland?
Yeah,
Further comments?
Amber, Director Clark has well spoken in this matter that we just need to support our small businesses. They're the roots of our community, and we also support the larger businesses, but the small ones are the ones that are just forging ahead and really trying to make a difference and coming out with new ideas, and so we want to support them.
Thank you. Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. Director Clark, you've really done a fantastic job of supporting our small business, not just with the bonus bucks, do we call them, but also with the grants during the COVID time and giving those small companies an opportunity to make it through those really, really hard and tragic times. So I really appreciate what you've done and how you've fostered this to where it's somewhat of an annualized program. So thank you very much, and thank you to all our small businesses in our community.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
One more time. When is Small Business Saturday?
It'll be Saturday, November 25th. So this Saturday. Hoping to see you out. Mertz meets, some Dusties kind of a thing. Yes, get out and about. Yes.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to adopt the attached resolution in support of Small Business Saturday, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Item F, 12F, set a date for Township's annual goal setting. Mr. Walsh.
Yes, so every year, the Township Board does their annual goal-setting process. It's not only a goal-setting process, it's a review of the current year as well. So when we get together, when the board chooses to do that, we'll go over the 2023 top 3 goals. We'll go over the action plan, A through, I think, I. Go through all of that. And then in addition to that, set an action plan for 2024 and an A through I or A through J action plan for 2024. So it's a comprehensive evening, lots to do. I did provide the M team a starting point, and that's all it is. A starting point of discussion for the top goals for 2024. I provided that on Monday to the management team just to start to get their feedback so we'd have something to provide. We hope to turn everything over to you on December 8th. And then from there tonight, when would you like to get together and do that? So that's what is ahead of you.
December 5th, I think. Tuesday?
Excuse me?
5th.
Well, so maybe. So the original, okay, so the original date was the 8th. But then I had had a discussion with, I can't remember, one of the board members who said it may happen on the 12th, at the second board meeting in December. It's like, okay, well, we've never done it on a board meeting night, but if that's what the board's gonna do, I didn't want you to receive the information on the 8th and have it on the 12th. I wanted to give you more time. So I alerted this team that if the 12th is chosen tonight, this is more information than you wanted probably, but if you decide to go on the 12th, let's try to have it done by the 5th, so you'd have a week to look it over. So the date is moving target depending on what you do tonight.
Board members. Mr. DeShane.
So we've done this in the past, and typically even a Saturday. I think last year, didn't we involve Larry Merrill as a facilitator for this process? And
No.
Well, we haven't used Larry and Merrill for the goal setting, but we have done goal setting on Saturdays, and we've done it on separate evenings.
okay. We haven't combined it with a board meeting.
What is your pleasure, Mr. Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So I think it would be wise to set aside a specific time for this and not take it up at a board meeting. And I'm going to be a little bit selfish too, because the only date that was suggested was the 12th, and I may not be able to make that board meeting if the prior obligation. So I would love it if we could find a time that would work for everyone, that we could take this up separately.
That's not a board meeting.
The 12th?
No, a date that is not.
Correct.
You're looking
correct.
for a date
Right,
that's
right,
not
yes.
a board meeting.
Right.
Okay.
If we needed a suggestion, I would throw out the 19th as an option, which is the following Tuesday. I think that would be, I don't know, I don't speak for everyone's Tuesday schedules, but I basically block off every Tuesday just in case.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
So I don't want to make a motion yet until we talk
Okay.
about it, I guess, but that would be my suggestion.
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'm looking at the fact that Christmas week, and members may be traveling, I'll be traveling that week of the 18th. I would throw out Thursday, the 14th as an option.
Mr. DeShane.
Well, I have another engagement for the 14th. I would be willing to move it, because I think it is important we do it as a separate session and not move into Christmas week, particularly as this board is met weekly for 3 months now. And I'd rather have 2 meetings in that midweek in December and have the rest of the year clear for family and other holiday events than to move it into the third week in November. So I like the 14th as well. I'd ask Trustee Henderson if that works for him, and Trustee Sunland as well.
Trustee Sunland.
My birthday's December 14th.
I worked on my birthday.
I'm thinking I might end up being with family and that evening. Was that a Tuesday night? I haven't even.
Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
Oh, yeah. I hate to be the sticky wicket, but
How about that Monday, the 11th? Is that a possibility? Timing wise, is that a possibility?
Board members?
Monday the 11th.
I could make the 11th work.
I can make the 11th work.
I could as well.
Could you?
I'll look the other.
yeah.
How about the what?
Oh, it's a planning commission night.
Could we do it at the fire station?
Yeah, but we can meet elsewhere.
Could we?
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say that, we would just, if you set in your, motion where the location would be, probably we'd have to set it at the fire station.
Sure.
Okay. Looks like Monday, what'd you say, the 11th?
The 11th, December 11th.
Okay, I need a motion. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'll move to set a date and time. Monday, December 11th. Oh, no. Oh, no. I just hadn't put it on my calendar yet. I'm sorry.
That's a problem.
Yeah. I literally just committed something to that date earlier today. and I haven't put it on my calendar yet.
So you
right.
won't make the motion.
So how about the following Monday evening, December 18th? Which takes us away from Christmas weekend.
December 18th?
Monday,
You
December
want
18th.
to make a motion?
Well, can we straw poll first?
18th works for me.
Yeah.
Okay, make the motion.
I will move that we set Monday, December 18th as the evening, as the town, board goals and objectives meeting. Can we make it early?
Date and time. The suggested motion is to set a date and time.
Okay. So I move that we set Monday, December 18th, for our annual board goals and objectives at 6 PM or even 5 PM? What's your pleasure?
I'd like 5 PM.
I can make it work. I'll.
5?
5
At
PM.
5 PM.
So the motion is to set the date and time of December 18th at 5 PM to conduct Meridian Township's annual goal-setting process. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Chair votes yes.
Thank you very much.
It worked for
Motion
you?
carries 6-0.
We now move to items for board discussion under 13. 13A is ordinance 2023-06, rezone 5010 Park Lake Road and adjacent vacant property, RA2RD, with a conditional rezoning agreement. Mr. Schmidt will lead our introduction and discussion.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I apologize. I was just trying to figure out how I wanted to start this. The request in front of you this evening is for rezoning of 8.72 acres of land on the east side of Park Lake, north of Grand River. It's a portion of vacant property directly adjacent to 5010 Park Lake Road and 5010 Park Lake Road. So the vacant property is split zone currently. The southern roughly half is zoned multifamily RD. The northern roughly half is zoned RA, single family, medium density residential. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the RA property to RD, subject to a series of conditions that they've offered. So this is a conditional rezoning. Just to remind the board members who haven't run into one of these before, this is a process under state law by which an applicant can voluntarily offer conditions. We cannot require things, nor can we ask things. This is a voluntary offer of conditions for the rezoning to proceed. They're offering 9 conditions. One, it would limit the uses to attached townhouse-style units and related accessory units. Building height will be no greater than 16 feet, 1 story. Building length shall not exceed 196 feet. Minimum floor area of 1,200 square feet. All roads are private. The rezoning is conditioned upon Redwood, the applicant, actually purchasing the property. So if they do not go through with the purchase, the rezoning automatically reverts. Those were the initial 6. After the planning commission public hearing, where there was a great deal of feedback from the surrounding neighborhood, they added 3 additional conditions. 1, that the development will not exceed 106 dwelling units. 2, that the gist of number 2 is that the northern 14 acres that runs north-south will remain undeveloped. That is the explanation of no development with respect to buildings or roadways will be placed outside the area described on Exhibit B. So that is it's a large finger of land that runs almost up to Sapphire Lakes condos, back behind Heather Circle. That will all remain undeveloped. And that no clubhouses, pools, tennis courts, basketball courts, gyms, et cetera, will be on the property. So really tightening it down. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission held a public hearing on the 25th. A lot of feedback on the matter. Brought it back on October 23rd, and they did recommend denial to the Township Board, largely due to the request not being fully in compliance with the future land use map. And I just want to talk about that for just a second, because staff at that meeting did recommend approval, but, and I'm going to quote myself, we note this is a borderline case. This is an interesting proposal because it's a conditional rezoning. If this was a straight rezoning, this would be an easy denial from staff. But because they are proposing to limit the development on the site and preserve about 40% of the site in the natural area, they're making a good faith effort to try and meet the intent of the master plan, which is to limit the density to under 3 dwelling units to the acre, and still get development on the site where multifamily is already permitted. So it is very much a borderline case from a zoning perspective. So I think that's all I have for now. I'd like to give the applicant a chance to present their information, if the board would allow.
Please do introduce.
So Emily, I believe, Emily, it literally just went out of my head. So I'm going to let Emily Engelhardt speak on behalf of the applicant. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for the time this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity to present this information to the board. My name is Emily Engelhardt. Do you need me to give my address?
Yes, please.
Okay. 3100 Telegraph Road, Suite 366, Bingham Farms, Michigan 48025.
Okay.
As I noted, my name's Emily Engelhardt. I'm here with our civil engineer, Ian Graham with Collier's Engineering. Just in case anything comes up, I wanted to introduce him at the outset. I just would like to take a brief opportunity to, hopefully brief, I know it's been a long meeting, but to introduce Redwood, my company that I have worked with for over 10 years in the brokerage side, as well as directly within the acquisitions, because I believe we are a unique developer and want to give you the opportunity to understand what we do as a company and what we're proposing here on this site. So just real quick, I'd like to start with our sign on our first slide, because we went through a branding effort several years ago as we've grown significantly since our founding. We decided that we wanted to, put a Redwood sign in front of all of our communities, which were named something individually, because people have grown to expect a certain level of home, of residence, of community from Redwood, and we are proud to show who we are and what we do. So that's why I always start with the sign.
Seriously.
Let's see. Okay. So who is Redwood? And who are our residents is kind of the big question. We were founded in 1991, so quite a while ago, and kind of with the idea of to reinvent what an apartment can look like and who might want to live there. We do one thing and one thing only. That's our number one core value, which is develop single-story, low-density, multifamily apartment neighborhoods. All of our units are 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, with an attached 2-car garage, a full driveway. So they look and feel a lot like an attached condo development, but they are a for-rent product. We've grown since 1991 with over 16,000 units in our portfolio. So we have grown significantly. And we found that is due to our success. We have really strong overall leasing rate of our portfolio. I think 98%, depending, obviously, it's always fluctuating with people moving in and moving out, but there's a demand for this type of product, and we kind of sought to fill it. We offer 24/7 professional on-site management, leasing office, all that kind of stuff. And then what's also unique is that we entitle, we build, and we own our neighborhoods. We don't sell these. We haven't sold one. And, you know, we are in the long game to develop redwoods throughout the broader United States. So, who are our residents? We are not an age-restricted product. We rent to anyone who qualifies. But we find that with the two-bedroom, two-bathroom design, that our residents are often empty nesters, seniors, folks who are looking for that missing middle housing. They're renters by choice. When you know, of course, we have other types of residents. We find that this is very appealing to professionals, you know, people who are seeking the feel of a single-family home, but they don't necessarily want to live in one for whatever reason, whether that be snowbirding, wanting to downsize, have flexibility. You know, they're building a home in the community, all different myriad of reasons that people come to Redwood. Our range of rent that we're projecting here, and again, this is looking forward to potentially when we would have these built in 2025, 2026. So this is, you know, what we're expecting. So it is a very high rent unit equivalent to a decent mortgage payment. And it's folks who are looking for a maintenance-free lifestyle. We find that our residents are often already living and working within the community. You know, within 3 to 5 miles, a lot of times our residents are coming to us, so they've been looking for this type of housing already. We offer peace and quiet is kind of our amenity. So we really try to create solid neighborhoods. We have a strong lease. We require background checks, income verification. All of the occupants over the age of 18 have to be on the lease, leaseholders. So we try to provide peace and quiet to our residents. And then just a little information. We do have a couple right around here in Lansing, in all the D communities, DeWitt, Delhi, and Delta. We have several very successful communities that you may have seen, as well as throughout the state of Michigan. So to that end, about our residents, this is just some general information looking at our 16,000 unit portfolio. The average age of resident is 51, almost 51, less than 2 people per unit, less than 2 people per 2 cars per unit. Just some facts that kind of present us as maybe a different type of an apartment than most people are used to. So. Redwood in Michigan, as you can see, we've grown throughout the state of Michigan. We are an Ohio-based company. I live in Michigan, I work in Michigan, and I've been involved with these 32 neighborhoods and more hopefully on the way. And we've been working throughout the broader Midwest. We found that the attached 2-car garage is very popular in the snowbird country and the snow belt country. So, you know, that's kind of been our growth focus initially, but the goal is to continue growth. We look a lot into communities to make sure that we're going to be successful and we're a good fit and that we won't cannibalize ourselves, that, you know, that the residents who are looking for this type of housing are already there. So here's just some of the things that go into our site search before we ever get to this point. So what do we build? As I mentioned, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, attached 2-car garage. Nobody lives above you. Stone siding, shake, vaulted ceilings. We think we build a very nice equivalent of a home. It has the look and feel of a single-family home. We also generally offer private streets, and again, as I mentioned, we have high maintenance or high service, low maintenance lifestyle. We take care of the snow, we take care of landscaping, things like that. You'll note our conditions note that we don't build a clubhouse. That's normal for us. We don't offer a clubhouse because we find most of our residents are coming out of single-family neighborhoods, things like that. They're already participating in the local gym, the LA Fitness, the senior center, and don't want to pay for those amenities twice and aren't looking for those from Redwood. Just a few examples of some renderings of our types of buildings as well as photographs of real built ones. We have a couple of different looks to our buildings, so when you're driving through the neighborhood, you'll see a different house. We use different colors so that it really does feel like you're going through a single family or an attached condo type neighborhood. This unit has a sunroom on it, so it's a little bit different, but different sizes, different offerings for folks. Here's just some more street views. As I mentioned, you know, we take a lot of pride in our maintenance. We charge a very healthy rent, and we have to maintain our communities to continue to do so. So just some discussion of what we do. I know you've received a lot of this information previously, so. I like to include this slide. This is our first Redwood that we built, 1991. We purchased a few, but this one was the first that Redwood built. It's in Ohio, and we still own it. We still operate it. It's still, doing well. We go through and refurbish them, but we take a lot of pride in continuing our commitment to these neighborhoods. This is just some information on interiors. We have walk-in closets, laundry hookups, so really you're not sacrificing the feel of a home. Just some photos of our units and the storage, the garage, things like that. For a downsize, we still have options for folks. So to our proposal. As Director Schmidt had mentioned, we are submitting a conditional rezoning. We tried to create this rezoning request to basically permit that only a Redwood would be able to be built here, by limiting the height, by limiting where things could be built. And then just the one thing that I wanted to highlight here is that in addition to the rezoning process, were it to be approved, we would still have to go through the entire approvals process before we would ever be permitted to build this, working through the Drain Commission, the Road Commission, Public Safety, special, all of the approvals. We understand that this is the first step in the process, and we recognize that there's a long road ahead, but we're hoping to have the opportunity to take that road. So as Director Schmidt indicated, this is our proposal. I won't hash through it again, but I'll just clip out the main points. The areas outlined in red are what we're actually asking for the rezoning to occur on. The little crosshatch area, or the large crosshatch area, we are proposing no development in that area. And then the remainder of the property is already properly zoned. At the Planning Commission, as Director Schmidt indicated, we didn't, the Planning Commission took a motion before I was able to present the additional conditions, which were to limit the number of units, limit the density, the area that was actually going to be developed, as well as limiting any major amenities that are available on the site, as well as to go through some of our responses to the questions that came up at the public hearing and questions by the commissioners. So I was just hoping to have the opportunity to talk about that, hopefully briefly here. So the residents and the commissioners were concerned about traffic, and that was, I would say, the number one concern that folks brought up. And at those two meetings, we performed a trip generation report, which looked at the need for a traffic study and what traffic Redwood would generate, which is the next slide. But we didn't have the existing traffic data available. However, after that meeting, Director Schmidt did reach out again to the authorities as well as MDOT, and was able to receive the fact that MDOT has done a traffic study in September of this year, looking at Park Lake Road at Grand River. And as you can see on this chart, that traffic has actually gone down since 2016. With the anomaly of COVID, it's generally remained close to the same, within 300 cars per day in the last however many years. But, traffic has not, the residents indicated with Costco that there was a large increase in traffic, and this is what MDOT shows us. So, while there's a traffic problem, potentially it's been since 2016. So, and what I'd like to point out on the next slide is that our proposal would be, of course, against a non-developed piece, it would be an increase, but against what is approved currently, how it sits, we would be providing a net decrease in the total amount of traffic allowed based on our trip generation memo. So we would have a almost negative 500 trips, if the site was built out to its maximum capacity as currently zoned, versus what we're proposing. And the other interesting point is if it was built out as single family, we would still be generating less traffic than if this site was developed as a single-family neighborhood. So, the traffic concern, we understand, but we feel that we would be providing some certainty as to what is going to happen with the traffic. Another item that was brought up was that this was intended to be student housing. Again, as I mentioned, we will rent to anyone who qualifies. We're not restricted, but we do not find ourselves to be attractive to students. We don't necessarily market to students. And we have, again, a very strict lease, only the 2-bedroom footprint, rather high rents. So while we may have some students, we just don't do that. As you can see on the above, which is some new information, I looked at our neighborhoods that are nearby larger universities in general proximity, as well as our Lansing neighborhoods, and looking at the population of 18 to 22-year-olds who reside in those communities. And when you look at the total, it's about 4%. So, our average age is 50.6, and I think this additional data, the estimates, show that, these aren't developed to be student housing. We sell peace and quiet, and I don't think that student housing is going to be a concern here. In addition, we conditioned ourselves to not include the pools, clubhouses, gyms, things that students might expect, especially at a high price point. I wanted to present this data, which I provided in our update to the Planning Commission, which we had drawn out potentially what might be able to be developed on the site as it's currently zoned, which includes single-family lots as well as 6 multi-story apartment buildings with a tennis court and a clubhouse and things like that, just to show that, there is a way for this property to be developed. I know there was some discussion of wetlands and floodplain. We did have the wetlands verified by the the township's wetland consultant, and this plan was designed with that in mind. So this is an achievable plan for a developer. Again, Redwood doesn't do this, so we're not proposing this, just to show that there is a way that this could be developed, and we would hope that Redwood alternative may be preferred. The other concerns that came up on the meeting were discussing the character of the neighborhood, the existing zoning, and I went through and just showed this property and what actually does surround it. On the east, we have railroad track, we have a large commercial district. There is, of course, single family along with some RX mixed duplex zoning and the existing multiple family. So I do believe that this property provides a natural transition from the heavier, intense commercial districts and the railroad, kind of stepping down towards the single family, especially with the 14-acre buffer area. This slide just shows a picture of a redwood in the center and kind of what's around us to the north, south, east, and west. And I do believe architecturally and at a scale that the buildings that we're proposing and the density overall is in line with what we see in Sapphire and some of the single-family neighborhoods. And while it's a different type of resident, being a renter versus a homeowner, there's still residential use at a low density. So we went through the 2022 master plan update draft as well as the 2017 master plan. As Director Schmidt had indicated, to look at the goals, while there was that borderline discussion of do we fit, our overall density for the site is in line with the future land use map in both of those plans. However, the actual use is a little bit different. So we wanted to go through and pull out kind of what we think we could help the township with in terms of, achieving some of the goals in terms of a diversity of housing, meeting the needs of different residents, the aging population. Another point which is a little bit difficult is that Redwood has found that we provide housing filtration in communities where folks aren't leaving their single-family homes because there's nowhere for them to go. They don't want to move into a 3-story walk-up, or they're not ready for an assisted living, but they might not want their single-family house. There's young families who can't move in because no one's leaving the house. So, Redwood does provide a place for people to stay in the community, to move through, and allow that housing filtration to occur. So it's just kind of a unique thing that we do. And while we don't provide affordable housing, it is a, diversity of housing type, things like that. And then finally, there's some discussion of the use being, preserving areas that have infill development. And, while this does look like a vacant land that was, woods, it has been farmland in the past, it has been used in the past. And so, it is in an urban area, and we're trying to cluster our development. So we feel that it is in line with a lot of what Meridian Township's master plan asks for. I'm almost done. Finally, one other thing, we got a lot of positive feedback from the Planning Commission about our product itself, as well as a need for it in the township. And one of the things that I heard a couple times was, well, we like this, but not here because it doesn't fit in the general area, or, a myriad of different concerns. And I went through after that first Planning Commission meeting and looked at the zoning map as well as the future land use map, and identified all of the properties that were zoned RD, RDD, RC, and RCC. And there are no currently zoned properties that are of a size to develop a product similar to this that are currently zoned, that aren't encumbered by wetlands, already developed, or undevelopable for whatever reason, with the exception of this property, which is a little expandable. I mean, it's not 100%, but, we have a significant portion of this property that is zoned RD. And then looking at the future land use map, a lot of those properties are the same. The only difference, there is one property that's indicated to be multiple family. However, it's a large, I think the former theater piece, and currently it's priced at a point where they're looking for density, which is much higher than what we're providing, and thus, makes it impossible for us to, put our development on there at this time. So, I've been looking in Meridian since I started working with Redwood. I know it's a wonderful community. I know it would be very successful for Redwood. And, we have a great interest in developing a community here. I wanted to bring that to your attention that, we would love to be here, and we've tried to find a home, and we feel that this site is a great opportunity for us. And ultimately, we think we can help meet the goals. We believe that, with the staff recommendation, it does make sense with the conditions, and that it would be a logical, beneficial land use, especially in light of the current market trends, the demographics. And we hope that you'd consider our proposal tonight. Again, thank you for the opportunity to go through all this and reading all of our correspondence that we have submitted. So I really appreciate it. I'm here for any questions, and hopefully I didn't talk too fast.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt. Thank you. So, where we are is that this proposal has been before the Planning Commission. Planning Commission has done its work and made, what was the recommendation?
The Planning Commission recommended denial.
And in your opinion, what are the basis for their decision?
The main basis for denial was that it's not a single-family product, which is what the master
Zoning calls for.
the future land use map calls for. Single-family at a density between 0 and 3.5 acres. For some reason, my screen just froze. I apologize. Specifically, it calls for residential.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things we're cleaning up in the next future land use map, because then we do have a category for multifamily residential. But that was the main argument, that it's not a single-family product, and therefore not in compliance with the master plan.
Okay. Board members, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. And thank you to the applicant for a very thorough presentation and for coming several times, several meetings about this. I know that the residents in neighboring communities have been very passionate about their engagement on this topic, and that can be tough. And certainly, we've all seen that before. I think, I guess let me start with this question. Generally, when these zoning requests come before us, we are not to look at the eventual proposal of what a certain developer wants to do with a certain parcel. We are supposed to look at all of the potential uses that this parcel could be used for if rezoned to the new category. Is that an accurate assessment?
As a general rule, that is the case.
Right. A little bit different here because they've conditioned the rezoning on them getting the property, in this case, or not?
It is. This is the one scenario under which you can have a more detailed conversation because they have, in this case, fairly specifically limited themselves as to what will actually happen on the site.
Okay.
Should they move forward.
Thank you. So this parcel currently is split zoned.
Correct.
It is partly RA and partly RD. Do we like that as a general rule?
Staff has recommended one of the goals of the future of the 2023 master plan is to eliminate all split zone parcels.
Okay.
These are not ideal.
No. And if the applicant this evening has presented a scenario in which the parcel could be theoretically built out under the current zoning without any modifications, would you say, has the staff reviewed that at all?
I mean, we've done a once over on it. I can't tell you it's exactly going to meet, but I can tell you that they're not, they didn't show you something that is completely out of the realm of possibility.
Okay.
What they showed you is a reasonable, probably not past first look at what our ordinance would allow.
Okay. And it's accurate to say, based on the information that was provided to the Planning Commission by the applicant and then to us this evening, that under a current zoning, more units could be built on that property than could be built if it was rezoned which is in front of us tonight.
Yes, I think that the difference really is because they are limiting themselves to one story, they're functionally cutting off potential increase in density, because that's realistically where you would make your density on a site like this, is you'd go up 2 or 3 stories.
Okay. And then have you looked at the traffic information that they provided in the cover memo for this evening's packet, and do you believe it to be relatively accurate?
You know, we have not found any of their traffic information to be unreasonable. I think the interesting thing about what they have is they have so much real, actual data, which is not usually what we see. They're able to tell you, okay, we know that they have detailed demographics as to who their renters are going to be, and therefore have detailed information based off those renters. The additional piece of information that we were glad to find was the MDOT information showing that, anecdotally, I live right there and I didn't think the traffic had gone up, but it was MDOT's data showing us it's actually gone down.
Right.
So we can, we could be, in theory, we could be a little more technical and require some more specifics, but they really do have reasonable data from comparable communities. It's hard to argue with that. I mean, that's actual facts on the ground.
Right. And I think, it's really easy to be concerned about the boogeyman of a vacant parcel versus a developed parcel. But when the rezoning is here before us, the question is really a developed parcel under its max build under its current zoning versus a developed parcel max build under the conditional rezoning that's before us. And that's part of the reason why some of the traffic studies are, they don't seem real when you're thinking about them in the previous way. Because if this was built out fully under its current zoning, it would indeed generate more traffic trips than if it was rezoned to be fully RD. Is that accurate?
Correct, and it's only because the condition, to just be a little clearer, it's only because of the conditional rezoning that that's the case. Because they're actually limiting the number of units, that's where that traffic limitation is able to come into play.
Right. So I've been giving this issue a lot of, thank you for answering all the questions. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
That helps me to at least clarify that what I think is true is true. And I guess one more. This would indeed have to go before the Drain Commission, the road department, and all the other approval agencies that any project would have to go through as a part of the development process.
Absolutely. To steal a metaphor from Manager Walsh, we are in the dugout still, really, on a project like this.
Right.
A lot of work ahead.
And as we know, there's a lot of comments at the public meeting at the Planning Commission about flooding, about water retention and water management. We know that the Drain Commissioner, for as much as we like to rib him in this room, he is very thorough and does care very much about making sure that those plans are well put together to address the stormwater and the runoff.
Absolutely, and I can say that for the first time in my career, the Drain Commissioner was actually at the rezoning meeting. One of his lieutenants was there discussing the proposal, which is a unique twist.
Okay, so I have reviewed this proposal as much as I could in the time given, and reviewed the Planning Commission both minutes and their remarks. And I think that I disagree with the decision the Planning Commission inevitably came to, that this should not go forward, this rezoning. I believe that a lot of the concerns that they raised are concerns that are better appointed to the SUP process as opposed to, and to be handled by the third parties that would have to sign off on this than it would during the conditional rezoning request. I believe that they erred in their analysis of the traffic generation because they were looking at it as zero build on this property as opposed to build out into the current zoning. And I believe that they erred in looking at the density of this project based on the number of units that could be built under the current zoning versus the conditional rezoning. I think actually that if this were to go forward, the conditional rezoning, that we would actually be possibly saving this parcel from having even more units. And I know that because it's written right in there to the conditional request. I also don't know that this doesn't meet the character of the neighborhood. I've looked at the imagery that's been provided by the applicant, and a lot of that does indeed look a lot like the homes that are in this area already. And I think that this conditional rezoning and further development, if it were to occur, would meet a number of our board priorities, including providing a wide swath of housing options to our residents. Right now, we're already passing new ordinances to allow for accessory dwelling units. Why? Because we acknowledge that there aren't many good options within Meridian Township for folks who want to age in place. And so the option that we provided with ADUs is to look at bringing someone onto a family property or having another unit available on a family property. This would allow folks who are looking to age in place to have another option for autonomy and independent living. I don't often disagree with the planning commission because I very much respect their recommendations to the board. I think that in this case, I do disagree, and I think that in this case, this is not a bad proposal, and in fact, would be a good thing in many ways for the community. So I'm sorry for standing on my soapbox for a while there, but I wanted to make sure I got everything correct with Director Schmidt, and those are my thoughts.
Okay. Other board members? Mr. Wilson?
Tim, could you tell us when that traffic survey was done by MDOT in September?
It was September, yes.
But, can you tell us the condition of Grand River Avenue at that time?
It was fully open.
It was fully open at the time of the survey. All right. What I noted in reviewing this is that both the master plan of 2017 and the proposed future land use map for 2023, or whatever we will date it, have in it that this property should not be rezoned. In both maps. That's correct, isn't it? I know you're struggling to find it.
No, it's okay. It doesn't speak, master plan doesn't speak specifically to rezoning any property. What it does is it outlines a proposed future land use for the site, which is residential from a half acre, or a half dwelling unit to 3.5 dwelling units.
Okay. And I note in one of the maps that the applicant put up that property is delineated as wet. If you noted on there.
Absolutely. One of the early conversations that we had with Ms. Engelhardt on this property was that, before you guys get too far down the road, you're really going to want to do a wetland delineation. And that's not something that we recommend this early in the process.
Understand.
They ended up doing that. And the information that they are presenting, the limitation of 106 dwelling units and the proposed sort of under the current zoning development is based on that wetland delineation. So they're functionally, everything we've seen thus far avoids the wetlands in its entirety. There's a couple areas where we need to do some refining to see where we're at in terms of the setbacks, but they're largely staying out of that even. So that I can tell you it's wet, but I can also tell you that they're aware of that and they have done their due diligence on that piece at least.
Mm-hmm. And I noted that the Drain Commission was represented at one of the public hearings. And at that time, that Drain Commissioner representative said, "I'm here for the Drain Commission." And we do have drain issues, correct?
I don't recall them saying we have drain issues. I recall them discussing a 1980s report that indicated they needed some control over, I would have to go back and re-look at exactly what they said.
I thought that was the
I was a
wording.
little it's unique getting feedback at this level from the Drain Commissioner's office.
The other thing that I noted is that the property adjacent to this, to the north, it's RA. To the west, it's RA. Even the two outlots that are cut out of the proposed rezoning are RA. So there is a character of that area that it is single-family home. And that's also something that I think is important to recognize. That's what I have at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Other board members? Mr. Schmidt, I'm sorry, Mr. DeShane.
Thank you. I thank the applicant. This is a really good proposal from Redwood. We put a lot of time and effort into it, and we've studied our community. Very few developers go to the detailed level that you have in understanding what we need and what we have in the township, and I appreciate that. It shows a real commitment to the community. At the same time, I'm not convinced that this project is in the right location, and I understand your concern, well, there aren't any other parcels that are waiting for it. We are We are a redevelopment community at this point. We don't have a lot of big open spaces. This is a tough parcel because it is a split parcel, and it's really hard to make a zoning decision on a split parcel because you've got conflicting zoning ordinances within the same parcel, and that makes it difficult. The other problem is these conditional rezonings have so many if-then clauses built into them. If we say yes to rezoning, then it goes for the review by the Drain Commissioner, then it goes reviewed back before the Planning Commission. And so we're making this big decision up front, but there's a lot down the road we don't know about yet. I don't think this adds as much diversity perhaps as Trustee Hendrickson does to our housing options. Since joining the board in 2017, we've had dozens in consecutive proposals before us for similar rental housing. The only ownership option we've had has been 2,500 square foot and larger homes. And most of those start at 400,000, many of them start at 500,000 or 600,000. Clearly, there's a market for rental housing, but there's also a market for home ownership, and there's not any new proposals for home ownership. And if this had involved home ownership rather than rental, you might have found less opposition from the neighbors. In terms of the master plan fitness, there appears to be no consensus on whether or not it fits the master plan. The Planning Commission said no, it didn't. Director Schmidt, whose opinion I respect greatly, says is on the bubble. We're not quite sure. But Trustee Wilson's comment that it is surrounded by RA does appear that it isn't a great fit for that neighborhood because you've got single-family RA housing all around it. So I'm not sure it's a good fit for the neighborhood, and I think that's why we got such strong, virtually unanimous opposition from the neighboring community. And that community knows it needs to be redeveloped. They know that it's an older community, and they know they need new homes in there. They just didn't like this type of a new home, these types of new homes that you're proposing here, particularly, I think, because they are rental-based. The flooding is an issue as well. Don't want to really discuss the Drain Commissioner. I discuss him enough at other meetings, so I'll just say that you have a tough road to travel to get his approval, should this board approve it. The Deputy Drain Commissioner did speak at the Planning Commission meeting and spoke in opposition to it for drain issues. So those are my comments right now.
Okay. Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'd like to piggyback on your remarks. 2 weeks ago, Treasurer DeShane, Director Amber Clark, and I sat down and said exactly how many rental units are approved but not yet built in our community. And we added them all up, and what is approved and in the pipeline and ready to be built is 793 units, all market-based rentals. And that is a pretty astonishing number, in my opinion. And also, it doesn't take into account Village of Okemos. We're talking about projects that have come before us, like Grand Reserve and the project that's going at Hazlitt and Marsh. So that's another, that doesn't apply to the rezoning, but that certainly is a factor that I take into consideration, what we have already in the pipeline.
Mr. Schmidt.
Madam Supervisor.
I'm not sure we have a consensus one way or the other at this point. So we do have new information and different information than the Planning Commission got. I suspect we need to sit on it for a while.
Absolutely, and this was a discussion item only, so there's no expectation of action this evening. What we will do is we'll bring this back to your next meeting with a couple options for you, how to proceed.
Okay.
I guess the only other question I would ask is, apologies for interrupting, but if there is any additional information that any of the board members would like to see, would love to know that. I know we did provide you with a fairly comprehensive packet. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
We will make it smaller next time as we hone in on where we're going. But if there's anything you were aware of right now that you need, please let me know. If not, you all know how to get a hold of me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for reintroducing the project to us. And now we all know the same information, which has not always been the case. But thank you for coming and providing us with additional information.
Thank you for your time.
We'll move on now to item 13B, paid parental leave policy. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Paid parental leave policy came up approximately 3 months ago at the behest, I believe, of Trustee Hendrickson and Trustee Wilson. We were asked at that time to bring something back, an actionable item before, I believe, January 1st for implementation. The board's had a previous discussion about it. The staff's had a lot of input to me about this proposal and how it might affect our operations with just 170 employees. There's no question that a paid parental leave is widely endorsed by the staff, and we appreciate Trustee Hendrickson and Trustee Wilson for bringing this forward. The merits of how long and all that, that's up to you, the policymakers. But we're here tonight to meet the goal of, I think, before January 1st, we're ready to move forward if you are. And I know Trustee Hendrickson has offered a policy, so at this point, I would turn it back over to you, but that's the background for the last 60 to 90 days.
Okay. Mr. Henderson, would you like to bring us more up to date?
I would love to. Thank you, Madam Supervisor, and thank you, Manager Walsh, for the introduction. So we had initially been discussing whether or not we could do 12 weeks of paid parental leave, whether that was feasible. And we received some feedback about operational ability, operational capacity. And we have since decided to pare that back, at least at first, to identify, first of all, whether or not this is something that would be used. And secondly, whether or not this is something that would have a more significant impact on operations than we originally had anticipated. And so what's included in the packet this evening is a draft policy for the township for 6 weeks of paid parental leave time. I say 6, this is what I put in as my recommendation. However, I understand there's also been some discussion about whether we should start at 4 weeks of paid parental leave, which would still put us ahead of many communities, both in the area and throughout the state. My recommendation is that we put this, whatever we recommend as a pilot program, we adopt for at least 1 calendar year. And then perhaps at the end of next year, we can determine the benefit and the operational impact of the policy. And maybe we can look at expansion in the future. That would be my hope. And so really, this was put together from a number of other policies that are implemented already in municipalities around the state. This is, I think, a pretty comprehensive policy as they go. Many of them were simply a paragraph. But we have a little higher standard when it comes to our policies and procedures. So at its core, duration of time available dependent. What it basically would require is that an employee be here and off of probationary status. They'd be a full-time employee. And there's a number of other restrictions that I'm sure everyone reviewed in the packet. But at this time, really, the operative question would be, is it 4 weeks or 6 weeks? And are we able to do this as a pilot program starting next year?
Have we actually established that we will have a parental leave program?
Well, that's the biggest question, I suppose, would be that.
How that's going to be shaped.
Right.
As a pilot and then decide for how long.
Right, I guess I was making an assumption that we were in favor of that because we voted several months ago to have a policy. It was just a matter of what policy.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Other comments? Trustee Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. So we looked at, first of all, I'm very much in favor of this policy. I think it shows our employees how much we value them. It gives them an opportunity to not worry about their cash flow while they're out for a limited period of time with their newborn or their newly adopted child. I think it's something that we're all in favor of. We certainly discussed it quite a bit. But when we look to the practical application of it, as doing it as a pilot program for either 4 weeks or 6 weeks, we ran into the reality of what is happening. Because as you all know, our police department is down a significant number of members. We have 31 full-time members. We have 42 budgeted, and it's a very tight scheduling issue. And it turned out that there are 3 members that will be going out for a period of time early next year at the very same time. So that to me creates a public safety concern. And therefore, as much as I love the process and I'd love to see us do a pilot for 6 weeks, I'm going to encourage us to look at 4 weeks under the circumstances of where we are in staffing at this moment. And I'm not necessarily committed to a full year. I think we could do perhaps 6 months and see how it goes and then come back. And I do hope that if we can get to full staffing, particularly in public safety, that we will be able to do a policy that would be 6 weeks in length. Thank you.
Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I too fully support this program. And I thought it was a great idea that trustees Hendrickson and Wilson brought to us. But hearing from the issue is that if you look at the average age by department, I would bet that our lowest average age, i.e. the childbearing years, are most likely the police and the fire departments because they tend to hire younger, active people and they can retire sooner. So our youngest departments, the ones most likely to benefit from this, are also the ones, particularly the police department, which we have the greatest shortage for. So I too would support 4 weeks rather than 6. I say that, and I work in the building, so I might get some evil eye tomorrow, but I'll take it because this is, as Trustee Wilson pointed out, this is a public safety issue. And if we allow 6 weeks or 12 weeks, we're going to leave our police department and our residents in a tough position next year. And it would be the wrong decision and a reckless decision for this board to make. So 4 weeks is as far as I would support. It's a comprehensive plan. It's not just maternal, it's maternal or paternal leave. It's not just birth, it's also adoption of up to a 5-year-old. So it's a very generous program. Not concerned about the cost, although the cost could be significant. We do want to retain our employees and we want to value our employees and we want to encourage them to support their families. People work here to support their families. That's why they're here. And this would encourage them to have a strong, healthy start to their families. So it's a good policy. I support it, but I only support 4 weeks at this time and not 6. I think we should give it a full year to try it out. I don't think we'll know enough after 6 months. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Trustee Wyszynski?
Thank you, Supervisor. Consistent with my colleagues, we've already discussed it and already agreed that this is a fantastic program. But understanding that, we're a smaller community than, say, at a state level, and it's important because we do only have a certain amount of staff. So I am not partial to 4 or 6. I think a pilot program is fantastic. So if you tier a pilot program, you can start at 4, move up from there to see what's feasible for the township itself. It's still, 12 weeks is a pretty standard parental leave unpaid, so even a third or half is still significant, and I think would still benefit our employees quite a bit.
Okay. Trustee Sunderland, you have,
I'm still curious as to what our current policy is, and I'm not sure I've had it laid out exactly.
Okay. May I respond?
yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So our current policy is if you want to take leave, let's say the mother has a birth on today. Okay? So her choices would be, there's no leave provided to her except for her accumulated sick time or vacation time. And we've had people exhaust all of their accumulated time to be home to take care of the newborn. So that's what we have. We don't have any sort of policy where we provide some time that's separate from sick and vacation and personal time. So what this would do is that new mother or the father or the adoptee would be able to have the first 4 weeks under this new policy. So for some people, if some mothers currently who are working for us, who have a child, they may not even have enough accumulated time to be able to get that 12 weeks of pay to stay home. So this helps provide some sort of initiative of the first 4 weeks of that care for the newborn. Right now, we offer nothing except for accumulated time. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
No comment?
Well, not yet, I'm still thinking.
So, I would say that I am totally for the improvement of some paid leave. I like the idea of a pilot program, especially in these hard times for staffing. And I certainly believe that we're ready to have the issue come back to us for a vote.
Sorry, we have to keep the door open for a public meeting. Yeah, no, that's okay. No, that's okay.
Come back to us as soon as possible. For,
We are, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, no.
no, just, from my perspective, I like 4 weeks. I like the idea of 4 weeks as a pilot and a reassessment after some time where we can reconstitute the amount of staff that we need to actually be able to do it, and everyone's responsibilities are covered without any further hardship for the township.
Thank you. We've been reviewing this working on this for about 90 days now. Mm-hmm. And so we're prepared to go forward as a staff. And so we would bring this back on December 5th at your next meeting for action. And that will allow expectant parents and spouses to properly prepare for January 1 and what going forward. Mm-hmm. I know we have one team member whose wife is expecting on January 2nd. So it'd be nice to have this wrapped up on the 5th for planning.
Sure.
So, but I do applaud. Also, I think I also made an error. I should have included, I believe, Clerk Guthrie was also part of bringing this forward. So even though she's not here tonight, I want to acknowledge her as part of the team that brought this forward. And we're ready to go as a staff. And I can tell you, out of a lot of the benefits that we've added over time, this has been a very popular one. And you would think, well, popular among those who, no, it's been popular amongst the entire team. People of all places in life, people who are not going to realistically be able to use this. It's been very, very widely accepted and appreciated.
Okay. Then we will look forward to seeing it at our next meeting.
Okay.
So that we can implement it by the first of the year, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 13C, Marshall Park Playground enhancements. I believe Director Maisner, who is not able to be here tonight, was going to present this. Are you going to take her place?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do the best I can. And I'll be brief. I believe this came from the listening sessions that we had up in Haslett. I believe it was the one that was at Raya School, which would have been your second one. And after that, there was some discussion about the equipment, which is very substandard at Marshall Park. Trustee Hendrickson and Wilson came forward and said, we noticed on the Parks Capital Improvement Plan for Parks, this was listed for a replacement in 2026. And that is the improvements to Marshall Park, the equipment. And so with that, there's no budgeted item for this, but with that, we took that to the Park Commission and got enthusiastic support for replacing it in 2024. So we're back before you tonight to bring this back and say, it's been through the process, it's got wide support, and what would you like to do, and what's your direction to staff on this?
Okay, Trustee Hendrickson, you have anything to add to Mr. Walsh's comments?
No, I think this is, well, I will, if you give me the opportunity.
And I walked right into it.
I think that there are many benefits of the listening sessions, but one of them is to hear directly from the residents of the community, an area of need. And this was one that was mentioned at that meeting that I think is a very easy lift for us. We were going to do it anyway, 2 years from now. There's no reason why we couldn't accelerate that and bring something a little sooner, bring results, concrete, in this case, maybe asphalt and set in place results to the residents who had requested that this be addressed. And so I would also enthusiastically support expending a little bit of money to accelerate the improvement of that park.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes, when I first brought this up to Director Maisner, I said that, she said to me, all of the projects in recent years have actually been in Haslett. There was a lot of money spent on Towner Road and other projects, but there's nothing immediately adjacent to large populations that may not have, may live in housing that isn't as fancy as other areas of Haslett. And so what we heard, what Trustee Hendrickson and I heard when we first started discussing this was, we need something that's adjacent, that's someplace to walk to, someplace that's safe, someplace where they can, people my age can go sit on a bench and watch the kids playing in the play yard. So that's why we came up with the concept. The other advantage, we think, is that it helps to make that northern entrance on Marsh Road, that northern entrance to the township, look more attractive. Because right now, that area is not, Marshall Park is not a great scenario for us in saying what we're doing in our prime community. So for those reasons, I'm really excited that we can do this, and I think there's a pot of money we can use to get it done. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I would just, I would concur with that, but I just came from the north side just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and really took a look at Marshall Park, and I agree, we could really make some really major improvements for a minimal amount of money, relatively speaking, but it does have a population there that could really benefit, and like you said, we both have apartments, we've got housing, but we have our aging population as well, so as well as we could spruce it up on that entrance into Meridian from the north, so I would agree.
And so this would be a collaboration between the board and the park commission in making this change at Marshall Park. So, looks like it's a consensus. Can we get the ball rolling by December 5?
I think Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My only comment was that my first exposures to the park system was walking around the lake back when I lived in Hazlet in 2014 or 13. And I walk away Marshall Park and I see then Parks Commission Chair Terry Banis there on her hands and knees pulling weeds at Marshall Park because she knew it needed a sprucing up. Now, Terry also worked hard with the then Park Commission to get the current park millage approved. And without it, we would have far less park system than we have now because we've needed matching money for everything we've done. And Terry and Todd Wilson and others, we've got the, Mark Stevens, Mike McDonald, they really worked hard to get that approved in 2014 and we all benefited from it. But I do remember Terry there pulling weeds on a Sunday afternoon, thought that is commitment. Of course, we see that all the time in our volunteers. That was an impressive thing. And back then, Marshall Park needed some improvement and it needs it even more so today. So I support this as well.
Yes, we're ready for December 5th.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
We can move on now to item 13D, Memorandum of Understanding with the Okemos Public Schools.
Yeah, so I have not been privy to this process as much as certainly Director Maisner, so I'm not adequately prepared for this evening. I just found out today that I would be, and I have reviewed it. I have one certain thing that stands out to me. What I would ask is that if you have any questions tonight, please let me know, but ask that this go back on for discussion when Director Maisner, who's the appropriate person and the most knowledgeable to speak to it. But one thing, Madam Supervisor and Board, that I would point out that really needs some future discussion is item 5 on page 3. And Chief Grillo and I have had a discussion that will provide access to a school liaison officer. May, when appropriate, may be better language, because as our numbers dwindle, Chief Grillo is not certain that he shall or will be able to do that. So that's just one thing that we'll massage the language on that. But other than that, I'd be happy to ask Director Maisner to bring this back on the 5th of December, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Mr. Hendricks.
My only question on this, besides, that's good you bring that up, was the fee schedule seemed light. Basically, if I'm reading this correctly, we don't pay for them and they don't pay for us. And so it seemed unusual that we would have a fee schedule where everyone just gets everything for free. And so I wondered if we were missing an attachment or if that was really the intent of the MOU.
Yeah, that is the intention. I will tell you, one of the big issues that's coming up, and I know it's been a long meeting, I'll make this very brief. The corner of Okemos and Kinawa, where all the fields are at, those are all, we were just made aware of 6 weeks ago, those are all going away.
All of them?
Yes, and that's a lot of youth activity that occurs there. So that's going to be something that over the next 6 months to 10 months, we're going to really sit down with our new Parks and Rec director and the school administration and try to figure this out going forward. Just want to make you aware of that.
Okay. So we'll expect to see it as soon as Director Maisner is ready.
Yeah, and we'll bring it back for discussion for you if that's what you like. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And lastly, item 13E, ordinance 2023-08, CV Conservancy District updates. Mr. Schmidt is
Madam
back.
Supervisor, I couldn't help myself. I will be extremely brief. This is a relatively easy change, relatively small change to the ordinance that was brought to my attention by my staff. Currently, in the Conservancy District, technically decks are not allowed, one, and technically every single thing you do requires a special use permit and a public hearing at the Planning Commission. So we have people that are filling in 5 cubic yards of a flower bed to get their house out of the floodplain to not have to pay flood insurance, and it's a 3-month process. Talking to the engineering department, there was an obvious fix. We already have an allowance around the lake where if there is 10 cubic yards or less of erosion, you can fill that without a special use permit. There's an exemption already built in. What this ordinance does is twofold. One, it allows decks formally now as a use. And two, it allows for us to then approve these minor impacts of under 10 cubic yards administratively through the floodplain administrator. There will still be mitigation, as is required for any impacts of the floodplain. This just takes out the public hearing process for some of these very small. We get one a year, and I assure you that every one of those residents is very happy when we're done, because it's always a much longer process than they expect. So this is just one of those quality of life things that my staff brought to me, and I thought was a good idea, and Planning Commission reviewed it, had the same thought, and so now we're in front of the board for any questions or concerns you might have.
Okay. So is this coming partially from the Planning Commission?
The Planning Commission reviewed it and did recommend approval of the change.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Is there a map related to the CV district?
So the CBD district technically covers the entire township.
Okay.
It's wherever, based off of the FEMA floodplain maps, a floodplain is indicated. So actually, one of the other sort of under the hood things this does is it removes the old references to the FEMA maps and literally just changes the reference to be whatever the current is, instead of, we used to have the actual frames in the ordinance, and that's not ideal.
Got it. I thought district led me astray, I think, in the title here, because I was looking for a district map, but we are the district, all of us, so, thank you. I think this is common sense.
Trustee Wilson.
Thank you. Madam Supervisor, there is a floodway that goes through the Indian Hills Golf Course.
Yes.
So there are properties along that north end that have applied to have decks before, and they have been disallowed because literally during certain times of certain years, the river is flowing through the street. And this then would allow them to be able to build a deck without going through this onerous process, correct?
Potentially. It's still not a guarantee.
Okay.
There's still a lot of things that have to happen. I mean, you still have to get Army Corps approval before you even come to us. We won't take it. We're not taking an application until you get approval from the state and the feds if they're involved. And that's the other piece of the slowdown is usually they come to us first and we're like, yeah, sorry, because if we approve something and then you do it and someone higher than us comes in, we're in a lot of trouble. So we just send them off to the higher powers. And that's, I would argue, part of the frustrating part of this is that, well, I've already gotten approval from the higher body and now I have to go through this other process. Usually what happens with the decks, not to get too far in the weeds here, but they're not permitted to be attached to the house, so it's a completely separate structure. Usually there's a different type of, it's not framing, but it's the only word that's coming to mind right now, that's involved so that it doesn't cause a major problem if the flood way full on gets it.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt, when was the last time our FEMA mapping was updated?
Well, that's an excellent question. Our ordinance reference is 2011. I do not think that this region, I'd like to double check, but I don't believe this region has actually been updated since then. I believe we're in process.
Okay, I think I've read that the region is in the process, but I don't
Yes.
know how long that'll take or, cost or anything like that. But that might be worth checking as we make this change.
It's a long process, I can tell you that.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Concerns? Then, December 5th?
We will be back at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now at item 14, or category 14, comments from the public. Are there members of the public who would, so I don't have green cards, but if you'll go first and give us your name and address, and if you'll go second, give us your name and address, we can get through this.
My name is Dr. Joshua Dam, 1517 River Terrace. I wanted to say, first of all, I want to thank Officer Grillo for being willing to meet with me with regard, and some social workers with experience in police departments. And so thank you for Officer Grillo's support on moving forward with that. Another thing I wanted to mention with regard to the conditional rezoning, because I was also at the Planning Commission, obviously just as not a participant. With a conditional rezoning, I think it is really important to evaluate, is the use of the land, like the specific way the land will be used, is that something that we want in our community? One thing that I found a little bit concerning with the proposal is they were saying that they expect this to be used by, aging community members, empty nesters and things like that. And part of the evidence that they presented, which was new evidence not given to the Planning Commission, was with regard to what proportion of 18 to 22-year-olds they have in their existing communities near universities. However, the closest development to a university that they had on their big list was still 4 miles away from the university, where they're proposing it's a little over a mile away, and they're, not Professor Walsh, sorry, I'm in university mode. Manager Walsh, mentioned the extension to the river trail, and it's going to go right up to that corner, and that's going to be prime territory for students to want to go there because they can jump on their bike and get to campus in 5 minutes. So the proposal of saying that, hey, this land use is going to be primarily for aging empty nesters, I think that's almost silly to anticipate that that's going to be its use. These are year-long rentals. These are going to almost certainly be occupied by students and probably members of the university. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just think it's really strange that they don't expect that that's how their property is going to be used, and that I just find that a little bit concerning. But otherwise, I just want to say, thank you.
Thank you. And if you would, please, sir, if you would come to a podium, give us your name and address.
He has a green card.
Oh. Vincent Leone?
Yeah, Vincent Leone at 5090 Park Lake Road. I wasn't planning on speaking again, but every time the applicant gets up here, they try to present new evidence that the Planning Commission didn't see. One of them is this MDOT traffic study. It doesn't indicate whether it's the peak hours. And if you got to honor what the Planning Commission did, they overwhelmingly voted against this, 7-2. Even the 2 commissioners that voted to have it proceed realized it wasn't great for the neighborhood, but again, they thought, well, it was the best they could do given the current zoning. But in 40 years, it's never been developed. You know why? Because it's full of wetlands and water and all kinds of other problems. That's why it's never been developed. Their biggest argument is, well, the worst case scenario would be 140 units, but it never happens. I don't know if that's my warning. Oh, I see
That's
it as
your
my
warning.
So I would ask you to just accept the Planning Commission's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, other matters and board member comments, item 15. Nothing? It is 9 o'clock, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
Please say
Yes.
yes. Opposed, no? Chair votes yes.
Motion
We are
carries
adjourned.
6-0.